All right, good evening, everybody. I've been given some wonderful reasons to try and be a little bit more timely on my starts. I still have a lot of stuff that need to get through, but we are here, and I'm going to take a quick minute to make sure that the stream is properly working. So we have got our quality options. I think my voice is coming through. Yep. All right, here we go. So there's a few. I don't even know if it really counts as housekeeping, but there's definitely a few details to go through. But the majority of the focus is definitely going to be on Phantom Brigade. And I think maybe one of the first things I'll say, it's been delightful to see how well received this game has been. So obviously, with Industries of Titan, I had a little bit of a mixed experience for the simple reason that while I really enjoyed Industries of Titan, it was kind of clear that after a while there was this rather negative sentiment that was building around the game in the reviews. And it actually took me a little while to sort of find the equilibrium again, and that really came through watching people play it, in particular through, I think it was a service called Dare Drop. There were a number of people who started playing it, and that really helped it helped me move past what I felt was over focusing on what the game could have been as opposed to what the game was. And the contrast, of course, is the experience of Phantom Brigade, which doesn't necessarily have unvarnished. Well, sorry, unvarnished isn't quite what I mean. It doesn't. It's not necessarily sort of universal praise, but it's one that, in terms of the qualities of the game, I feel are better reflected in the overall review score. So if I take a look at this, it's currently sitting at 83% positive. You can take a look at the total number of reviews, 1,316. That's after a week. It was sitting within sort of the top 20 of all games. And in fact, one of the things that's probably an indicator, I'm going to guess that probably the people that are on the concurrent views for the Steam stream, I'm going to guess that those are probably not people who are specifically sitting there watching me, although obviously I'm very grateful that Brace Yourself let me do that video. But what I did notice was that it was still somewhere on the top 6 on the front page for the better part of a week. It's actually today was the day that it sort of dipped off of that front screen. And all of that is just another example it's a proxy in terms of how many people are sort of finding the game and potentially making a buying decision. So I'm delighted to see that another game from Brace Yourself Games has sort of found its audience, that it's been a positive reception. And I like to overly focus on the negative. There seems to be a guy who's probably now like my biggest fan, who's like constantly coming in and complaining about the fact that I'm talking about quote unquote random things. Now, if this was my stream, I think it would be fair to say that that's a completely legitimate criticism. But I actually don't think there's a point in that Phantom Brigade video where I actually go off topic. I feel I was quite disciplined about it. And I remember being annoyed by it because it means that anytime I go off topic on stream, it means that's a choice. It means I have it in me to do a near full stream without digressions. But yeah, with that in mind, like you have to. I don't engage with all of it, and I should actually be rewarding the nice stuff more than the mean stuff. But one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight that is that I actually feel a little bad. It doesn't strike me as a good habit to like write down notes of all the names. But there were actually a couple of people. There were, I think they were people who had watched my stuff on YouTube. But there were a few people who actually recognized me from that Steam stream. That is a unique experience for me. That doesn't normally happen. So I was actually really happy. By the way, there is a reason why I'm waiting on this. There's a patch that came out for Phantom Brigade. I'm just finishing the installation. It says it's about a minute and a half. But I was actually really grateful for that. And it's such a remote chance that this is ever going to get to the people who need it. But if you wrote something, hey, Mecha Paladin, Thank you. Yes, you're a little different from the people I was talking. I was actually going to get to that next. But yeah, it was again. I think it was some people who had either seen me on YouTube or Twitch. They might even been people who saw my Call to Simulator stuff because it's not the first time I've been on a Steam broadcast page. But either way, there were some really nice people who said, "Is like, oh, I'm really happy to see that you're doing this. You know, I like your stuff." And it was so nice, and I wanted to make sure that I sort of marked it and said a thank you. But ultimately, I don't have the names, so again, it's a weird one where I seem to be creating the wrong incentive and giving the attention to the people who are complaining about the length. But again, I'm sure anybody who's seen it will notice that I'm maybe not being that serious on a lot of it. Saying that the video gets 5% longer every time somebody complains about a turn taking too long. But on that note, we have Mecha Paladin inside of the chat here, who did find the stream, and there have been a couple of people. This is again a very unique but a really cool experience where people have sought out the stream, and I gotta admit, like I didn't make it easy to find, right? Like I think it's reasonable to introduce oneself. Okay, it says 2 minutes and 45 seconds now. Something's got to be getting in the way of the load. This is on my solid state, so sorry. Just give me a second here. I'm gonna go hunting and see if I can find what's going wrong. Anyways, where I was going with this, I introduced myself at the beginning, but I'm very careful, at least as much as I can be, to make sure the focus is where it needs to be. And obviously, I don't feel that Brace Yourself's store page is the opportunity to sort of build my brand, other than hopefully doing a good job. I know Maddie said some very nice things it was actually last week. I know a number of people kind of came in and, and said hi specifically off of that. And, of course, people like Mecha Paladin really went out of their way to find my stuff. And I am very, very grateful for that because, again, this is just a hobby for me. It, of course, doesn't mean that I don't try to take it seriously where I can, but I appreciate the amount of effort that requires relative to the fact that there's like a million streamers out there. And I mean, even for Phantom Brigade, right? We're in this wonderful case now where I'm not the only one streaming the game at any given moment. There's a bunch of people who are going to be streaming it. So people have their choice and they can find something that works a little bit better for them. So again, it's my opportunity to say a big thank you, not just to Brace Yourself for that opportunity, but also to the people who really, went above and beyond in terms of seeking out the channel, because I didn't, fill it up full of advertising. It's something I appreciate because I know I could have made it easier to find me. But on that note, we are ready to load into Phantom Brigade. So we're now onto patch 104. And I have the usual disclaimer to get out of the way. So for those of you who haven't figured it out by now, I was given a copy of this game from Brace Yourself for promotional purposes. There's only one place that's ever really asked me to say something specific in terms of a broadcast. So it's really just a question here that I was given something of value to play the game. Clearly, I am incredibly enthusiastic about it. But it is important to disclose this stuff off the top. So, that being done, we're just going to let the game load. There is something in the dock. It just doesn't seem to be loaded yet. I'm already really excited for DLC, and you haven't even played it. Oh, I didn't know that you haven't played it. Yeah. This is the other interesting thing, too. I think it's obviously great news that Phantom Brigade has, by at least outside accounts. Again, I don't have the inside track in terms of what the plans are, nor do I think they would share them with me even if I asked, right? But it's better not to better not to create that situation in the first place. But I think it's fair to say that games that games that do well are more likely to be expanded on than games that don't necessarily do well. And I also think I mean, first of all, I believe if you take a look at Ryan Clark's biography on, I'm really wondering what's happening with the loading on stuff like this. This has got to be something about my drive. Yeah, that thing is screaming away at 100%. I'm not recording. So the worst that happens here is it just takes a while for the game to load. Oh, there we go. And for some reason, we can't see the game. Oh, I think I know why. Nope. Huh. Okay, that works. But this doesn't count as a full screen application, huh? There we go. Sorry about that. That background looks like an image used by Star Without Number. I'm not familiar with Star Without Number. That's actually directly from NASA. It's a Hubble image, but it's edited. It's kind of cut down the middle and blurred, just so I had something to fit the background. It's mostly, I had been playing a lot of space-style games, so it was a convenient background. Anyways, it's been like 10 minutes, and it's taken me this long to get started. So thank you everybody for sticking with me. Ah, cool. Actually, so I don't really. The problem with tabletop is it's got the problem of discrimination against the lonely. I don't really have that many people to play that sort of stuff with, so I actually just recently picked up a book for Traveler, which is a very, very interesting idea. I have no idea if I'm ever actually going to get to play it, but I'm starting to, I'm starting to appreciate sci-fi tabletop a little bit better. How you doing, Allgrins? But yes, you said, I've owned it for a few days, but I've been too busy to play it yet, hoping in the next couple of days. Yeah, well, I mean, if you're on the road, I appreciate you sharing the details. I suppose I'll just say you work in the unnatural resources sector. Yeah, I have to imagine. I mean, like, gaming's a fine hobby, and like laptops let us do it on the go. But like, there is something about just like, having the right time and the place, and especially for a game like this, right? There's that special moment when you finally get to play this thing that you get to. Does Traveler allow you to die in character creation? I didn't know that. I know there was a Middle Earth one that let you do that, but yeah. Anyways, I don't want to delay the start too much. And actually, I have it's International Women's Day, which for those of you that don't know, it's actually a communist holiday originally. The person who rages at communist mentions, by the way, was a total jerk in public to me yesterday. So I don't think they'll be coming around, but if they did, it would be a wonderful. It would have been a wonderful opportunity for that. But I did actually have a fun little data project tied to International Women's Day. So here's the deal: we'll wait for the first milady to show up, and then we'll do a digression on data stuff. I didn't say communism was necessarily bad. I just said that the one guy was like ranted a lot whenever it came up. I mean, I will admit, I think a bunch of people think I'm a closet Tory, because I tend to actually be somewhat more pro-capitalist than my kind of more tolerant liberal view of the world would maybe imply. But yeah, no, I'm not going to solve the world's problems on the broadcast. But I have noticed that it's less, maybe less recognized at least among my social circle, that it's a communist holiday. Like, so for instance, my friend, colleague from Ukraine, mentioned it's celebrated there as a proper holiday, and it's obviously a reflection of its the fact that it was part of the USSR originally. So, and the Treeographer, I'm not in BC. I'm in Ontario, actually. I wish I was in BC, unless Ontario is a treehugger province that I wasn't aware of. I come from BC though. I wish I could go back. All right, there was something I was going to say. Oh yeah. So, anyways, there's a small little data thing I can share once we go through it. But I figure it's a funny one. I actually wound up sharing it with someone on Discord, so I have it fresh in memory. But I have put off playing this wonderful game. Oh yeah, sorry, I was talking about potential upgrade paths. So I get the impression that Brace Yourself. So my guess, without any evidence, is that the experience from both Phantom Brigade, but probably more so with Industries of Titan, has made them less inclined to share plans until they are locked in. That is not from talking to anybody at Brace Yourself. That is not from any inside knowledge. It's actually based on how they are replying to particular messages in terms of people asking for features, and also how I saw people react to Industries of Titan. And I think this is the right call, because as unfortunate as it is for someone like me who likes to get excited about things and sort of get to see how things are made in behind the scenes, the fact of the matter is that if people are going to enjoy the game less because they sort of feel like there is something that has to be there, and this is as much about people's perceptions rather than what they're necessarily saying, obviously you want to do something that's going to maximize the the enjoyment of the game. But it is true that Brace Yourself has supported their games for a very long time. So Crypto the Necrodancer has fairly recently gotten an update. And that game is very old. I think it's 8 years old now. It's an old game for sure. Likewise, it would be hard to see a successful game like Phantom Brigade not receiving support after release. But as I said, or maybe I was about to say, if you take a look at Ryan Clark's biography on the Brace Yourself site, I believe he says that there are 8 projects that they're currently working on. So there's a few things, like if we take a very broad definition of projects, let's say that Industries of Titan and Phantom Brigade were included in those, and let's also include the publishing titles. So that would be Godless, is it Cobalt Blue? I think it's Cobalt Blue, and Super Raft Boat together. No, I miss Vancouver a lot. I love UBC, but I love BC, but I had to go to Ontario for work. So, but that's fine. I actually got to visit a couple years ago and had a wonderful time. It made me appreciate just how deep my social ties are in Western Canada, and how incredibly appreciated I felt there. So it was a very fond memory. Yeah, anyway, so we've got the 3 Brace Yourself publishing games. Let's say Phantom Brigade and Industries of Titan are included in that, so that's 5. We know Rift of the Necrodancer is coming out. So even with that leaves 2 more projects that are unannounced and being worked on. I have, in terms of reckless predictions, I think there's a small chance that they might be working on something like a 4X, but I'd put it on a lowish probability. It's just like one of those things that I'm like, maybe I can see it happening. But oh, that's interesting. Yes, I used to have family in Kelowna. So I know it quite well, actually. I prefer Vancouver personally, but that's, I think, probably just more of a city thing. Although Kelowna is much bigger than it was when I was there. Okay. So, I think I said I was going to go after the reinforced convoy. That's what my save title said, but I also have 64%. One of my mechs is at 64%, so there's a couple things I'm going to do. Number one, I eventually want to get another mech frame. Oh, I should have let it stand up properly. I wonder if I go back. Nope. Yeah, we're not building a mech frame yet, so I need to get 300 parts. Also, sorry, I really should finish one step and another. So I don't know what the story is going to be for Phantom Brigade, whether they're going to go all the way and release, DLC for it, or if maybe they're going to have some extra time for development, like just to work on some of the things inside of the roadmap that they had wanted to do. But my suspicion here is that there's a little bit of a contest for resources almost, because of course, if you've got, to our knowledge, so that in terms of things that are unreleased, there's 3 like in development projects in theory at Brace Yourself, based on the analysis that we did before. And like the fact of the matter is, there's a really talented team behind this game. And, they made Industries of Titan better, and the Industries of Titan people helped make Phantom Brigade better. But in the end, like, there's not an infinite amount of time or people available. So it'll be interesting. Like, obviously, I kind of want them to do everything all at once. Oh, they're running. So this is where I might want to invest in the overdrive. Yeah, there's probably no way I'm really going to catch them, is there? So I wonder if this is a patrol coming after me. I'm hoping to take more than one at once. Not gonna work. Alright, this should get interesting. At your order, the base flies into action and prepares for a fight. An engineer sprints towards the bay to check on the guns, passing a scout relaying combat data through the radio. There is shouting everywhere. At your side, someone's leg bounces up and down, boot heel tapping on the grate. You feel all eyes on you, awaiting for your command. All right, let's take a quick second here and see where my units are, where they're at. So we already decided that there's going to be... Right, so this one I got to think about damage. So the sniper gives me better concussive damage. The marksman rifle, though, gives me better overall damage, and by a significant amount, right? You can see that 441 versus 644. So I think I'm actually going to try this baseline. And before we mess around with any of that, let's see what's going on with the Herald. So I believe this is this minus is meaningful. Like, I think this is a worse version of the AR2 burst, so we should immediately start with the higher level version. The Spark is a better handgun, same mass, better heat generation. So it's a shorter range one, but for the speed on the Herald, I'm actually okay with that. So now we're going to take a quick second and see what the story is with torsos. The main focus I want to work on here is can I make the can I improve the mass, or basically reduce the mass or increase the power is the big one I want to focus on. Well, yeah, actually, so Algrins, you've been with us for a while, so you'll know that at least the versions of the game I was playing, I already had the speed up and stealth options already unlocked. So this is actually taking a bit of getting used to, but it's good. I actually think it makes the opening provinces quite a bit more different, and I think in a better way. So, but yeah, it's definitely going to take some getting used to. So, next up, I want to see if I can improve. Okay, so the 644, in this case, this shield doesn't do that much for me. So this Nox is a good example of the sort of torso that I would want. So the heat dissipation goes down, but notice that its power goes up and the mass stays the same. So my protector here becomes a faster moving mech. Probably not by much. We're going from 80 to 81. And I suspect I'm going to be able... So this is a restoration reactor, so we can probably switch out some of the some of the details there. No, I can't because I don't have any other reactors, but we'll start with that at least. Okay, the Nox legs. Not much of an improvement we can do there. There's definitely an improvement we can make on the left arm, but we're not quite ready to do that yet. Okay. So the last thing I want to do before I go into the details on the Herald and the Protector is just to see if there's anything I can hand off to the longbow. The reason I do it this way is that the left arm is usually the one that I want to put the lesser arms on, and so I find it easier to jump between the different mechs rather than do them all in one go. So, alright, so we already made a decision on the marksman rifle. Now I can switch. So the Granite looks like a good candidate for a sidearm. And yeah, it looks like there's a better torso for it here, so... Elbrus legs, we have to give up weight for that. Okay, better arm as before. Alright, so this is the sort of thing that I want to put on the longbow first. Although I'm wondering if, for some reason, I missed this on the Herald. Nope, weight problems. Okay. So right arm on the longbow is a higher priority than left arm on anyone else. Okay, so that Nox 2M would be an example of something I would replace, but let's start by... So I'm going to prioritize the Herald first because that's a sort of a frontline unit. Protector next because the shield arm, if I can, it's nice to have the extra protection. So we'd give up a little more heat dissipation. Oh yeah, that's right. I gave it this funny arrow one, so that's 158. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for this Nox arm. Yeah, but with the 169 still better. Okay. And I'm not going to throw away this stuff yet until we build our third mech, but we're good. So one of the reasons why I ran towards the allied unit is I'm hoping that the fact that the patrol was coming after us. So like, sorry, I should maybe be clear here. I was less trying to avoid the patrol, essentially for the same reason I couldn't catch the convoy. I figured the patrol was going to catch up with me too. But if I can close the distance, it means that I think this is the reinforced convoy that we're coming after. Mind you, we probably won't get the gear because it's not a convoy raid mission, so maybe I should have thought that through. Either way, there should be a lot of scrap coming off of taking out a large number of enemy units, assuming we survive. Commander, the base is circled around to the perimeter. We're ready to pick the squad up if needed. The enemy will hold the site if you do so. Rebel unit sighted, requesting immediate reinforcements. Let's make this quick. That looks like a machine gun. Okay, so reinforcements arrive on turn 6. And it looks like that's 5 units of reinforcements, so I was mistaken in terms of when this will all or in terms of what I'm up against. So yes, this is a tank with a machine gun. That's going to be pretty scary, actually. 525 on its own. We've got a unit with a sniper rifle. That's also going to be pretty scary. And then we do have one missile launcher. It's a sidearm. Okay, so this is a very sniper-oriented team. It's marksman rifles and sniper rifles. So the first thing I want to do is to see who's being targeted. Okay, so most of the hate is on the Protector. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is if I take a look at the attack, so the Dice Sniper Rifle does 180 damage. So in theory, I can throw the shield up. That thing's got 644 kind of ready to go. I don't want to rely on it forever, but it does give me a little bit of flexibility in terms of how all of this is going to be handled. The other thing I want to focus on is what am I up against with the unit with the machine gun. Right now, I'm far enough away that I don't need to worry, but I also don't want to hold off the turn to deal with enemy attacks. So the nice thing here is I can move. It's just going to hit the side of the hill, so I don't need to worry too much about that. And then we can start focusing on the unit which I consider the bigger threat. Oh, I was mistaken. So they're using the rockets against the... Okay. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to run most of the way and then dash. So I'd prefer to use the turn to sort of fire on stuff, but clearly I want the missiles to be actually. If I do this, and then I just... I'm trying to make it so that the enemy unit, the majority of rockets that are fired wind up in the allies' back. Yeah, I think that's as good as I can get it, to be honest, so... There might be a couple of other funny things that I can try and do, but let's just dash to escape, and then we move on. Okay, now I don't have that much to fear from the sniper rifle, but if I can avoid the damage, so much the better, right? So I'm curious. Interesting. So if I just walk up like so. Okay, so the sniper rifle has a problem. Okay. We stand and wait. Something seems to be in the way. I'm not entirely convinced that's safe. So I move up like this at the start. Okay. I think I got an idea. Nice. Okay. So essentially there's some distance between us, right? So I need to first thing I need to do is actually make it to the enemy, and it's going to be a little bit of an indirect route, but I like what's happening here in terms of hitting the enemy in the back with the missiles. Essentially the Herald's going to wind up flanking the machine gunner. My Protector's going to be able to move in and sort of fire the machine gun at whichever target they find most useful, using this hill as cover. And then the unit with the marksman rifle, the longbow, is already starting on the unit with a sniper rifle. And the nice thing here is that all of these different attacks are essentially just going to hit terrain. So we're able to do the damage, but the enemy's not going to be able to damage us. Let's see whether or not that turns out that way. Okay, disappointing result with the marksman rifle. Okay, looks like those rockets, for the most part, didn't hit the enemy. But lots of damage to the legs, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. We get a second dash in, partly for the mobility, but also because I want to get into the action as quickly as I can. Yikes. Alright, so the other question is, can I double that up? Yes, I'm testing the limits of my heat, but I think I should be fine. Now it looks like they're drawing their attention to the the longbow, which is probably not a bad option. Okay, so I can't make the distance there, but I bet I can make it here. It's a little scary. I'm just trying to think, is there a... No, I think our best option is just to go all the way out. And then I can follow up. Cool. It's about as good as we're going to get. Now, the machine guns get focusing on my protector. More importantly, there isn't like an obvious defensive point for it. So one thing I could try and do is sort of dash off to the side like this. Actually, that works better than I thought. It does sort of keep it out of the fight longer than I was originally planning, but that may be worth it in this particular case. What if I just doubled the dash? So I don't think it's going to hit the tank. And it's clear here that I didn't manage this. Yeah, I thought I'd lined that up rather well, but well, that's life. Okay, so we're going to hit the side of the hill. I'm not crazy about my kind of bruiser unit hiding for so long. What I'm going to do, if I just walk them up like so, I don't really accomplish anything. Okay, that's a direct line. So, again, I wanted to be a little more aggressive with this unit, but I'll have the option of attacking this unit after the fact. Yeah, let's see how it goes. So I'm most interested in the fate of these missiles. I'm pretty sure I'm going to wind up hit by these. We've got a straggler. Oh, did the trees save me? Cool. All right. All right, pilot's already down there, so this is pure overkill. And Does the marksman deliver? Alright, better than last time. So that's center torso. Oh, favorite song's on. Okay, this is actually opening up a lot of opportunities for us. So I don't even really need to move. I just need to let her rip with my mech here. Now, one thing that's nice, right? We take a look at the stats on the SR3 dice. It's not a weapon that we want. If you take a look at the angle that I'm attacking with. Oh, hang on. Nope, that's the left-hand side. Never mind. I could try, actually... Yeah, you know what? Let's try and hit him from behind as much as we can. I don't think I'm going to be able to get away with a third attack. But yeah, the aim here is to try and maximize the concussive damage on the enemy unit. Okay, I don't have that much to fear from the sniper as long as I've got proper positioning. Alright, that's a small worry, so maybe if we dash it... Yeah, that works. Give it a little breathing room just to stabilize. So I probably should be focusing on one target at a time, but this, you know, I gotta work with what, what I've been given. So I am sort of consigning myself to lose, or to miss some shots in this case. But I think it's the right call, given that, well, number one, like, I know I've built my squad reasonably fragile, even... I mean, to be honest, I just don't have that much in terms of options. But... Okay, that's not going to work. But number two... Does this thing have a minimum range? No. And I don't have the ability to dodge. Okay, we're just gonna walk away. We'll see if I can get fancy in terms of moving around the side, but I think this will be wasted. But yeah, so in this case here, like, there's a little bit of damage I can do to the center torso, but we know we're going to do a lot more with the machine gun when the time comes. So that's the trade-off I'm willing to work with. Respectable damage. What are we looking at here? Cool. And I don't know if I should believe that pilot concussed or not, but that's great news if that's true. So the real question is going to be, how do we handle the missiles? Because again, we don't have a dash to protect ourselves here. So I think at this point I should carry on with the machine gun. Alright, so we're going to stand in place and... So we'll fire our gun, then we'll get into close range. Following that, I think here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause for a second to take a couple shots. Now that's probably going to be where the missiles wind up hitting me, but then we're going to move to the other position. Now it says pilot concussed here. It's not taking any action, so we'll get the Herald in for any cleanup. This is probably not going to do anything, but we'll fire it. They're almost crashed. So this might take him down before he can get the shot. That'll be amazing if it does. Oh my god! Your sacrifice was not in vain, my friend. I'm very sorry for what's about to happen to you. This guy's got to be ejecting this turn. Yeah, so just, if it wasn't clear what happened here, basically this unit was about to attack the main one. I was like, oh man, what if we can crash him before it goes on? That's why I reacted the way that I did. Let's see how that turned out in full. We didn't wind up taking that much damage anyway. It is a sidearm after all, so. Oh man, they are really determined to get us now. Okay, so we'll back off for a little bit. Let her rip with the gun. Honestly, the machine gun should be sufficient. All right, well. I'm trying to maximize the scrap here. This is one of the reasons why I'm sort of taking one shot at a time. Well, no scrap there. I am an economist, so I have enough math envy. I have enough math envy to sort of know how little I know. I'm numerate, let's say, but I'm constantly reminded by my severe limitations by engineers and mathematicians. Good call though. Like it's a discipline that I have a lot of respect and admiration for. It's something I wish I was much better at. Oh, who is that? Mecha Paladin, thank you very much for your subscription. I keep promising to fix the alerts, and I completely fail to do so. So, hey Riley, how you doing? For those of you who don't know, actually this is a great opportunity. So I'm going to be sharing a couple of links. So Riley, I'm sorry, your beautiful music is now going to be some background music, but for those of you that like the music, Riley is the man responsible. More importantly, this is something I still can't believe. He was completing his PhD at UBC at the time I was doing my degree. Now, obviously, between the two of us, one of us is a fantastically successful individual. But I will just point out that if you would like, the soundtrack is available. So it is available on Steam. It's also available on various streaming services and all of that. But I would strongly recommend that you check out the Phantom Brigade soundtrack on Bandcamp. And I mean, so first of all, you get to sample the stuff. If you haven't checked out Bandcamp, it's a great site. It lets you sort of check out the music as it goes, just before you buy it. But the reason why I also want to direct you to the Bandcamp link is that his other music is on there. And what I was particularly interested in is I probably wouldn't have checked out A Fold Apart had I not seen that he worked on A Fold Apart as well. And this is something that I get through Apple Arcade, or at least I should. I know I downloaded it. I haven't actually played it yet, and I keep promising to. But there's other compositions, and presumably because I'm assuming that I'm not gonna lie, the last name really makes me want to say Herr Dr. von Koenig, which is probably really offensive, and I'm sorry. You are a real doctor, though, so. But in any case, I'm going to assume that whatever the kind of classical composer equivalent of smashing the guitars is, I'm assuming that he has not like taken his DAW and like smashed it against a brick wall or something like that, declaring that Phantom Brigade is the last word in soundtracks. I'm gonna guess that when there are future projects that are ready to be shared, that's going to be available on there. But more importantly, because so much of my streaming career was actually spent at a point where I was paying down student loans and such, and because I do appreciate the support that people have given me, I think it is equally fair to support the people who are creating the stuff that you really enjoy. So obviously, Mecha Paladin, I'm very grateful for your sub there. But of course, it is absolutely worth remembering that in the end, I'm going to be a bit of a tourist on a lot of the things that I play. I like playing the games. I like talking over them. But there are real people who you can follow, both on creative platforms such as Bandcamp, as well as social media platforms such as Twitter. They're doing great stuff, and obviously that great stuff doesn't happen if it doesn't get supported. So if you think you know someone who would like the Phantom Brigade soundtrack, or maybe you're interested in it for yourself, I would at least invite you to consider Riley's music. What else is it going to say? Takri, yes. All right. So, okay, tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. We are going to get some, salvage, and then I'm going to do some data work with all of you. Now, some of you have seen a oh, no, not at all, Riley. I haven't been to video games live, but if 1 million of you go out and buy the soundtrack, we can convince Riley to perform this with a live orchestra. How many copies need to sell for you to compose a specific song with the Mahler hammer in it? And out of curiosity, how many people in chat know about the Mahler hammer? All right, so let's, first of all, I don't think I've ever seen a crystal matrix before. 25% damage buildup. That's got to be for the beam weapons. I usually like to go for the greens and blues, and then we'll see what's left over. No! I got to scrap the cluster if it comes to that. Next track, you write, I'll include it for you. It'll be tough right now because you're working on a super chill jazz. a Mahler hammer solo. Okay. So, please enjoy the following music while I bring up... I'm trying to decide if this is... Well, you know what? Let's make this fun. Let's do this live so you can see me in my native habitat. I'm searching for Google Trends on Bing because I have a sense of humor. Okay. This is Google Trends. For those of you who don't know about it, this is tied to International Women's Day. So for those of you unfamiliar with it, unfamiliar with Google Trends, I'm hoping you are all familiar with International Women's Day. Google Trends is basically some indexed information in terms of the popularity of certain search terms. So what we'll do here is we'll explore International Women's Day. It's starting me off with Canada over the past 24 hours, so we'll do a worldwide search and we will go for the maximum amount of time. And the first thing you'll probably notice here, right, is kind of it's got a pretty common pattern for a time series, and I don't think anybody is particularly surprised that the peaks here wind up showing up in March, right? So it's International Women's Day. People go Googling for International Women's Day. There's a note here. Just I think they changed the way that they calculate the stuff. Yeah, improvement to our data collection system. Just to give you an idea of the interpretation here, because Google doesn't publish the how do I put it? Like they don't give the actual like number of people doing searches information. That is private to Google. But what you can get here is basically this is the relative interest over the period of time. So 0 is the lowest amount of searching, 100 is the top. So we would know that probably I'm going to assume that it would be March 8th, 2018 was the peak of searches. Seeing a decline in this, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean that International Women's Day is any less popular. This is probably a reflection of the fact that Google might be a little bit less popular as a search option than it was before, because, you know, we're hearing things like people using TikTok and other platforms to do their searching now. So, no surprises here, right? Coincides with the day. What's interesting is you can add other search terms. So let's add in the search for International Men's Day. Now, I'll note here that the peak for International Men's Day is lower than 100. This is because it's considering both series. So in this case, the absolute top is the March 8th searches for International Women's Day. The highest amount for International Men's Day is lower than the largest number for International Women's Day. Thanks, feminism. And honestly, the trend that I find really interesting in this is a little hard to see. But what I will note, right, is you can sort of see the little peaks happening around March, right? And you can basically see exactly what's going on here, right? You've got a bunch of people who see that it's International Women's Day, and they're furiously pounding at their keyboards, "Why no International Men's Day?" Well, as it turns out, that November the 14th is International Men's Day, and that's a little bit clearer to see if we get rid of the women, as is befitting of International Women's Day. And you can actually notice that there's two peaks for International Men's Day. Prior to 2018, the biggest peak for searches for International Men's Day is in fact on International Women's Day. Probably the most masculine statistic that I could possibly come up with. But what you'll also start to notice is that in November, November is the next sort of peak that you wind up seeing. And the thing that was kind of interesting, and this used to be a lot more funny to report, because you'll notice that the number of searches on International Women's Day are so much higher than International Men's Day, but that's not true anymore. It's actually the case now that International Men's Day is now actually being searched more on International Men's Day. My guess here is this is actually the contribution of the British comedian Richard Herring, who for several years would go on I think what's happened here, Richard Herring for many years would go on Twitter and find people saying, "Why is there no International Men's Day?" and tell them it's November 14th. And of course, like, it's a funny bit, right? And of course, people love telling people what to do on the internet. So I suspect what's happened is that over time, people have now gotten like become aware of International Men's Day, and as a result, you are finally seeing something a little bit more proportional to what we see in terms of other holidays, which is maximum searches on the actual day. But yeah, I mean, International Men's Day is actually a thing. So you had someone on your feed say something like, I should treat women today the way they treat me on International Men's Day, but that would be bad. Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that, Decree. I only know there's an International Men's Day because you responded to people complaining about no International Men's Day. Yeah, I mean, like, so we talked about this before. Like, International Women's Day has its origins in the Russian Revolution in, you know, the USSR, and it was specifically a marker of the women's contribution. I mean, you can go to Wikipedia and see all this stuff. I did do a blog article which more or less did this stuff. There were some things I didn't like about that article that I wrote by the end, but yeah, like it's definitely one which, like, I would assume that in like Eastern Europe, you know, this would be something that is probably a bigger deal. Although obviously, you know, we do live in a globalized world, so we have, you know, there's a little bit more knowledge about, just the kind of worldwide special days in general. International Men's Day doesn't quite have the same history of it. I actually think it might be from the 70s, but this is why God invented Wikipedia. So let's figure out how much you want to bet that this thing is going to be a protected article. Oh, nope. So where does it say? 1992. So I was off by 20 years. Yeah, so parental alienation, abuse, homelessness, suicide, violence. So it's a little bit like World Pulses Day. Wait a minute, you haven't heard of International Pulses Day? I think I might have this wrong. World Pulses Day. An international day established by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations to recognize the importance of pulses, dry beans, lentils, dry peas, chickpeas, lupins as a global food. February 10th. You missed it. It's almost a month away. But yeah, anyways. There's a number of there's a list of these days, which I love reminding people about. But yeah, like obviously the context for International Women's Day, it is a much more established day, whereas International Men's Day is a relatively recent one. But yeah, the real point behind this whole thing was just the fun little story about again, you know, the one day, right? March 8th is the one where you have so many people running into Google going, why no International Men's Day? How did you not know about Lentils Day? Well, there you go. These are the sorts of things you learn in the System Chalkcast. But anyways, I'm hoping that was a sufficiently amusing digression. Happy International Women's Day, Tikri. As an international woman, you are now representative of the group being celebrated and appreciated. Domestic women must now go and find their own day. Let's get back to Phantom Brigade, assuming I've not completely alienated everyone on that digression. Too much responsibility? You can bring in other international women. But yeah, let's get our loot. Oh, reinforced convoy's still here, but there's no way we're catching up with it. So I think we're just going to head to the base. My priority is definitely going to be collecting enough supplies for a new mech frame before I go. That patrol is going to want to do me harm. But yeah, I want my third frame before, or fourth frame before we do anything else. This is going to be a hard base fight. Bases are the most challenging military structures to defeat. Be sure that you're ready before you attack. It's wise to tackle roaming units in the neighboring regions before choosing to assault a base in some cases. You've received intel that units in this base are using a brand new technology, regenerative armor. This armor is capable of absorbing damage over and over if left undisturbed for more than a few seconds. It might be worth focusing your fire on one mech at a time to prevent this. By the way, because Riley mentioned that he's doing a jazzy soundtrack, or some of you know that one of my favorite features about Apple Music is every once in a while I'll be hearing, like I'll just kind of put it on the made for you recommendations and such, and then there'll be like jazz playing, and I'm like, that's right, Apple, I am a cool guy. And then usually what happens immediately afterwards, there's like some chiptune song that comes on and puts me in my place. But for a brief moment, I get to feel like I'm a cool guy. So hopefully Riley's future work will help restore the equilibrium, depending on how the player classifies it. Okay, now before we go in, let's bring our new toys. So Harold gets first crack at everything because it's on the front. Now, curiously, this arrow, even though the arrow is the lighter torso, it's actually considerably heavier. Oh, it's because of the plated perk. So there's something I can do to fix that. Nope. That's bolted on. I should have paid attention to that. Okay, so if I'm willing to give up some integrity, I can get faster, but that's over 100, so I don't think that's the right call. Yeah, so I think we're going to stick with what we've got here. Any better legs? I don't think so, but it doesn't hurt to check. Heavier arms, so not going for it. 202, slightly better heat dissipation, but not worth it. Okay, so I think that's all I've really got for the Herald. Longbow, I might be able to make a few more individual choices here. I'm pretty happy with the marks. I mean, the marksman, the aiming wasn't that great, but I'm not quite ready to pack away the midway yet. So we'll give it a shot, one more shot with the marksman. Total armor is not bad on this. So we're currently at 425. Now the integrity is 285, but we get barrier on it. So that's, what, 464. The only drawback is that we have less power, probably because of the heat sink. Oh wow, look at that. Look at what happens to my speed there. That's a big drop. But if I ditch the heat sink, and maybe we give it a reach thruster. I mean, it could be better, but at least we're not completely immobile. $284. Yeah, so we'd be giving up 100. Not quite for this one, but I could see this working elsewhere. So we'll throw that Nox arm on it. Okay, so now we see what the protector gets. Okay, so the usual routine now. We'll take the Herald, we'll see if we can give it a better left arm. We can. 202. I don't think the heat dissipation's worth it in this case. which means we put a fancy arrow arm on this fellow. All right. I'm reasonably happy with where we are with that loadout. And this counts as an easy fight for us. The rule is they don't get livery until they liberate a province. So, even if there are new construction. Plus, it does actually kind of look neat when the brigade... Like, it's cool to have a properly painted brigade, but it's also really fun when it sort of looks like they're patched together, especially in the early stages. So, let's see what we're up against. No identification received. Targets continue closing in. Reinforcements needed. Okay, so we're really boxed in, but we've got this hill to defend. Okay, so an autocannon, marksman rifle, submachine gun, and the machine gun's actually going to be the biggest worry that we have. We've got turrets with a machine gun and a missile launcher, and then, of course, the reinforcements. And it actually says here that they're coming from the army. So, marksman's coming after the herald, so I'm going to want to weave between the buildings to work that out. The machine gunner is also paying attention to the herald. So I've got a couple options here. I can stick the herald behind this this hill here and let the rest of my team sort of pound on the enemy. I don't think that's the most exciting way for me to handle that, though. Trying to find the right... Ugh. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not crazy about the fact that I'm wasting most of the shots in this, but it's what I got. Now, if I'm lucky with the marksman, we should actually just be able to take out that tank early. Don't have a ton of options in terms of running away, but I'm gonna leave that for tomorrow me to worry about. And then I'm just gonna dash behind the cover. So there's a couple of reasons why I'm doing it this way. Number one, we know we're protected from the building here, but the reason I'm doing the dash at this specific point, this is where the shot starts. It's already far out of range, so I'm not that worried, but I think I might have talked about this before, because everything's simulated in the game. If you just take a look at the way the shot's going, right, the bullet has to travel, so this is kind of maximizing the protection that I get just from my movements. And that's basically something I'm going to try to exploit to come in and be able to harass the enemy, even if that winds up happening later on in the fight. I might be able to do just sort of a cheeky shot at the end there. Let's see how it goes. So as you can see, no chance of any of that hitting. And as predicted, the tank got taken out. So this is a really good start for our fight. We don't need to worry about engaging with the turrets. We've taken down one enemy unit, admittedly a reasonably small one. And I think we can actually just follow up with a bunch of machine gun fire on the enemy while their back is turned to us. So that's a nice little bonus too. So I'd love to have the longbow a little bit more active in the fight, but clearly here I'm able to take advantage of the hill for cover. And what I want to try and do here, this is a marksman rifle, so I don't have a ton of opportunities to escape. So there's a small chance that works. Alternatively, I can do a big dash off to the side like so. And I'm kind of guaranteed protection, but I'm also out of the fight for a bit. And I think fortune favors the bold, so I'm going to dash forward. So they start firing here. Now again, if you contrast that to the move side to side that I made, it's probably better if I just take it from the perspective of the unit that's firing, right? So if you take a look at how far my unit's moving, it's not that far away. It's good that I'm still dashing, right? So generally moving fast is going to help you. Oh, is that tall thing on the right beside the turret of the rig a power source for them? So, you talking about this thing? I've always thought that the missions should be telling you that they're power sources. But I'll confess that was a mechanic that was added later on in the game, so I'm not 100% sure. Transfer. That's a great term, actually. I'm gonna probably wind up stealing that. Just like somebody in the Phantom Brigade chat rechristened the Renegade the Runagade because they're always running away. I like that one too. So just so I can clarify, are you talking about, I'm going to call this A or B here? Because those are the two objects I could see behind the turret on the right. But I guess I would have been here. So this, was it? Yeah, I'm going to call this A, but I'm probably wrong on this. In any case, I will confess, like the power thing I've always assumed was something that was specific to a scenario, and I could be incorrect on that. I generally have not used power as part of my strategy. I usually just sort of tough it out and make the most of the situation I find myself in. I should probably experiment with that though. Maybe when I've got a fourth mech to mess around with. Okay, so obviously I want to wait out the attack. The other big question would be, where do I want to make my mark? Like, do I want to... I guess they're going to be attacking me over here, so probably I should kind of stick to my knitting. All right, that's not a good place to stand. So, let's be honest here. This is not the strongest of protection, but it does let me be a bit of a bully to the enemy mech. And this should be a bunch of concussive damage that's happening all at the same time. So. I think you all know which one I'm most interested in seeing how it turns out. Oh, that's gonna connect for sure. Oh no, it hit the building. I should be worried for the second round of attacks. Okay, I think there may be a delay in in the connection here, so you'll probably hear me repeating the same question over and over again. Yeah, if I can, like, I think if it makes sense, I'll try and take out a power source. But my guess here, like, based on what I know about the game, my assumption would be that if it doesn't have it as an objective, then it's probably not going to do it. But we'll see if we can get some kind of verification. Okay, they want my blood, so I think if I try and dash, I'm going to overheat, yeah, and get hurt. So we'll wait a bit. Okay, so if I just run it, It's one. I think I'm willing to take a chance. Fun. Okay, I actually really want to see how this goes. So basically, they're going to weave through. They're going to use the last that they can of this building for protection. They'll fire basically just inside of the window here, and then essentially as they're trying to get behind cover, do a final little batch of cheeky shots at the unit. So don't have a whole lot that I can do until I get off of this hill. So let's just hop down and lumber along. So we do have enough to open fire with our machine gun. And then if I can get the longbow in play, that helps with the long range attacks. I want to be a little careful of where I deploy the longbow, because if I put them too far behind my ally here, like if they're too close, then they may get hit by stray shots. But this is effectively 3 units all attacking at the same time, so... Absolutely. I completely understand where people are... So actually, for those of you who are interested in this, a really common request here, and I was in this group as well, right? Really common request was for the game to implement sort of the full replay, like from beginning to end. And so far as I can tell, this is something that the team that was making it also wanted to do as well. But again, I'm not 100% sure in terms of what everyone's specific backgrounds are, but from my understanding, Adelaide Jenkins, who I believe is the creative lead on this game, has a background in some kind of simulation. And again, it's a great feature of this game, right? Every single bullet, every action that you take, right? This building, potentially collapsing as a result of the damage it takes. Everything in the game is, everything in the game has got sort of this very complicated system working behind it. It's what makes the game so cool. But the difficulty is that if you play a game, so a lot of people have been mentioning a Battlestar Galactica game. I like thinking of Frozen Synapse just because that's the one that I've played. When you play a game and you see a replay, it seems like something that's easy to do because you've seen it in another game. But of course, the difference between this non-deterministic simulation that's being run, and to be honest, like for myself, I don't know quite why that. Like, I'm not quite sure why they made the decision that they did, because generally when I think of random number generation in computers, it's seeded, right? I'm a big Civilization fan, so you have the seed to stop you from being able to reload the turn over and over again. Or if you're doing, some kind of research, you have a seed so that people can get the exact same results that you did, and there's no question in terms of people messing around with the numbers. Now, one thing that could be happening is I know they use DOTS, which is the data-oriented technology stack for Unity. I think that's specifically the ECS, the Entity Component System. And I think in this case here, it just happens to be more efficient use of the resources. So, using multiple cores and all of that. And I suppose if you're doing something like that, all of a sudden determining the order in which things are dispatched to different jobs suddenly becomes more difficult. So that might be the reason why. Again, I'm not a game designer. I don't know Unity well enough to understand how the entity component system works. But I can see why that would be something that is very challenging to do. So the way that they were apparently able to implement the replay is that they'll take sort of snapshots over the course of the 5 seconds in terms of where everything is. And essentially from that, the simulation is still running, but because it's sort of updating the state of the world at certain points, kind of like keyframes in animation if you've ever done that, it stops things from going too far away from what you would be expecting. But the reason why I'm going off on this long tangent here is that there's a pretty amazing image that somebody posted to the Phantom Brigade Twitter account. I think it was a reply. I don't think it was the account itself that posted it. Of quite literally a missile going between the mech's legs, right? Like, just one of those 1 in a million kind of shots where, you know, you play this game and you're like, can you believe this just happened? Now, imagine knowing that happened, right? Seeing that amazing thing and wanting to see that in the replay. But because, yes, actually, I should share the Phantom Brigade Discord because you kindly asked me for the... my own Discord, so let me just grab that real quick. That, of course, is not just for Mecha Paladin. For those of you who like this game or want to engage with the developers and the community, that is there. There's definitely stuff. There's a section to share Titan content and such, and I highly recommend you all use it. But yeah, so again, imagine the feeling of knowing that when you played the game, a missile just flew between the legs of your mech, and you know there's a replay feature in the game. But because, again, it's not fully recorded, because in the end it's running the simulation over again, you keep doing this replay and you keep seeing it explode between your mech's legs, you're not going to be able to recapture that moment again. So again, taking those kind of keyframes seems to have been effective in terms of getting this replay working. Like, I have noticed a couple of times there were a couple of weird things, but as soon as I found out that basically they're taking sort of little snapshots and moving on, that made everything make sense. But of course, to do this over the course of an entire battle, I suspect in this case here, from a purely technical standpoint, they have something that's working in terms of a full replay. But the amount of memory that it takes to be able to sort of record something at a resolution that would allow you to replay the full battle, it's just not realistic to deploy that in a patch for people to be able to use. So I've got, like, the amount of RAM that I have in this computer is something beyond what I need for gaming, is the easy way to put it. So I might do well under a circumstance like that, but clearly it doesn't make any sense to just massively increase the system requirements for the game so that you can implement the full replay. And again, there's a lot of very, very smart people working on the game. I've probably horribly summarized the technical problems that they're having and why those problems sort of have emerged. But that's the general impression that I'm getting. And I don't think there's anybody sitting at Brace Yourself Games saying, you know, I'm on team not including replays. You know, I don't want people to be happy. I suspect in this case here, it's a question in terms of whether or not they're going to be able to sort of fake it enough that we get the full action movie at the end. But honestly, the way it is right now, like even like before they implemented replay, just being able to set up a turn like this and see how it works. Like, obviously, I want to see how this this move to cover turns out. That alone is fun to watch, and I just like the fact that the replay lets me catch the stuff that I missed the first time around. So anyways, you've dealt with my rambling, so let's see how this goes. Ooh, I gotta get out of here. If I recall correctly, there was more smoke that was in the sky as buildings started getting destroyed. I don't know if that still happens. I thought this thing did concussive damage. I must have been mistaken. Oh, he did get hit. I was going to replay, but we actually won, so that went really well. All right, so we get some freebie Nox legs. We've got a budget of 170, and there's a lot of stuff that's not damaged. So after collecting everything, we still have 95. So if I scrap everything, so I have 55 left over there. So I am going to grab some parts. Yeah, I think that's as good as I'm going to get. That's enough, though. Very quickly becoming a fan of Brace Yourself games. Them being Canadian helps. Yeah, no, they are. I don't know how many people appreciate just how well Canada really punches above its weight in terms of game development. So off the top of my head, so Vancouver-based devs, Red Hook Studios, Clay, so the Don't Starve and Oxygen Not Included people. Brace Yourself Games. There's another big indie. I think Tom Francis is in Vancouver right now. Obviously, he's originally from the UK, so I don't think we can count Suspicious Developments as a Canadian studio yet. Edmonton used to be a Ubisoft headquarters. I don't know about Edmonton, but definitely Ubisoft Montreal is a big thing. There's also one in Toronto, which I believe is responsible for Far Cry now, and also Sherbrooke, Quebec, I believe. Your high school art program used to do tours of their studio. Okay, I may be mistaken. I know, at least in terms of the Prairies, BioWare is certainly the very well-known developer. But there's got to be others, right? So I'm actually curious now. There actually used to be a Rockstar in Vancouver as well, but I think they got folded into Rockstar Toronto. Oh, interesting. There's a Ubisoft still operating in Edmonton. Why did I not know this? I had a job application with Ubisoft, but it was with Montreal. Cool. But yeah, BioWare is obviously in... Well, apparently there is a there's when I did a Google search, Ubisoft jobs in Edmonton, apparently they're looking for C++ programmers in Edmonton for Ubi. So, I had a friend who had a copy of KOTOR for Xbox signed by all the people who worked on it. Yeah. So, definitely BioWare is probably the most famous of those, but they're not the only one. Once you start considering like outside of Vancouver, and I'm sure I'm missing out on developers that I shouldn't be, but I'm trying to go from memory here. Cuphead, pseudo, is it MDMR? I think. I don't know if this one's as well known, but Keep Talking, but Nobody Explodes. That's actually local, so they're in Ottawa. I think it's Steel Crate Games is their name. Tunic, I believe, is from Nova Scotia, formerly known as Secret Legend. Kit Fox Games is based in Montreal. Red Barrels, former EA and Ubisoft people. So the Outlast folks are Canadian. In fact, not only are they Canadian, but they actually got $1 million from the Canadian Media Fund to make Outlast. So that's another, your tax dollars help pay for Outlast, for those of you who are fond of horror games. And I'm just trying to think, are there any other indie, like Canadian indies that I can think of that are like names? Because like obviously there's a bunch of smaller names which people may be like, oh yeah, I loved that game, but not immediately know. But like I feel like Brace Yourself, Clay, Kit Fox, Red Barrels, like these are ones that sort of like people will sort of recognize. I agree too. There's sometimes, like, I used to work in film, so there is a tendency for jurisdictions to sort of like race to the bottom in terms of giving tax breaks. I feel that there's enough Canadian talent that it is desirable to to invest here because, this is a good place to get stuff done, and it's not just because it's cheap. But yeah, I mean, the Canadian Media Fund exists for a reason. I mean, you can get snobbish about this sort of stuff, right? And be like, oh no, it should only be oil paintings and, and black and white films. But I think the Canadian Media Fund at least has a part to play in terms of making sure that Canada has been able to not just be kind of like, I mean, I don't want to be too down on the Canadian film industry, but obviously, like, some of it is Hollywood North and some of it is really just doing the production work, whereas a lot of the, it's not necessarily Canadian content that's being generated. It's more things that have their origin in Los Angeles then being shot up here. In the case of the Canadian games industry, I really feel that there is sort of like local talent that has been sort of raised and nurtured, and that they're not just sort of staying on grants, like they're not just sort of renewing their grant every year and that's their whole business model, but they're taking those grants and ultimately becoming sort of viable standalone businesses. So Outlast 2, for instance, did not use the Canadian Media Fund, and I think it's just ultimately because they probably found it more financially rewarding to self-finance, which is obviously what you would like to see in terms of a vibrant cultural industry. For those of you who are curious, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if you ever want to look it up, it is publicly available information. Not the people who applied, but I believe the people who have received money. It is actually public information in terms of those grants. So if you're ever like me, they just changed the website, so I may not be able to. It used to be the experimental stream, but they've changed all the names here. Oh, here we go. Funded projects. Yeah, there we go. I'll give the link in chat here. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I think this is kind of neat, especially when you talk, like we do wind up talking about sort of games industry related topics here. It's not the friendliest interface here, so like this is all of the funding. So there's 18,441 items in here, but in this case, like, we're only interested in gaming, like gaming context. So let's start with digital media. Oh, better still. Well, I mean, television is not going to matter, but we can do games. So in this case here, like, we already have a pretty healthy number, right? 1,180 different projects supported by the Canadian Media Fund. You can do different program envelopes. So there's a number. Oh, hang on. Is that the right one? Yeah, no. This is also kind of helpful, right? If you're thinking of applying for this stuff, it's helpful to just sort of see how comparable projects have, how they've, what programs they came up through. And let's say we'll do, I was going to limit it by like production development or something, but I don't know if that's a good division. We'll take a quick second here, right? So I think this would be the most recent stuff, right? So we're almost certainly haven't heard of The Upstairs. It's a Montreal-based game. It's prototyping. And they've committed, $250,000 towards it. But I would not expect a whole lot. I would not expect to find a whole lot about this. Production, of Sweat and Data. This one's 800,000, so almost $1 million. Also Montreal. No, it says physical location exhibit. So I suspect this is probably not exactly the same as the sort of thing we might see on Steam. But what happens is if you start moving through, if you start sort of moving through the list, and especially as you start going in history, you might notice a few, you might start noticing some familiar names, or at the very least, some companies that you're familiar with. So, for instance, Outlast. So that's the 2013-2014 funding stream. This was post-production. In that case, they got $30,000 for it. I believe A3P is the specific program it was under. I know Outlast got more money there, which makes me wonder how this is sorted. Oh, now I've gone and done it. Where were we? I would have thought I'd found something. I'm pretty sure Darwin, was it the Darwin Project? I want to say Darwin Awards. No, I think the Darwin Project also got money under this program, or one of these programs. And I'm pretty sure there's some Clay projects in here as well, but they would probably be closer to the end. Oh, there's Moon Hunters. I'm sure some of you played that. CBC augmented reality game. I'm really looking at the names here, so I'm sorry if anybody recognizes any names, feel free to speak up and I'll find them again. I forgot that Maze was Canadian. But I will go back to Moon Hunters, because again, it's public information, right? So 2014, 2015, 130, 659, development money, it's bilingual. Oh, this would be interesting, actually. So if we do delivery method, I bet we'll find more. I bet we'll find more Steam stuff. Oh, I quite like Moon Hunters. It's tricky at the first time. It actually took me a couple times to get into, but yeah. So this makes a little bit more sense. So 330 for digital delivery is a little bit more in line. So this is well, actually, see if you can tell which game this is, and then we'll go back to Phantom Brigade. In Chronosight, only players' power of deductive reasoning can stop a black market syndicate. In the shoes of a conflicted genius, Agent Dryce, it will be impossible to simply guess one's way to the end. The user must act as a true detective, comparing clues in witness testimonies to determine who is the culprit. But everything isn't as cut and dry as in Sherlock's day. When small clues seem out of place and players are interrogated and threatened with reformatting, can their own memories be trusted? With 3 new IPs created and released already, Kitfox Games continues to act as a world-leading creator of rich, intriguing worlds and cutting-edge systemic gameplay. Chronosight builds on this experience and fanbase by creating an entire new way of playing detective through exploring witness testimonies while guiding the player to explore digital legacies in a challenging series of investigations. Yes, Moon Hunters is kind of that personality test game. So about $500,000 for production. But does anybody want to guess the name of? So obviously, if you go and search for Chronosight on Steam, you're not going to find it. But it is actually a game that some of you will be familiar with. Alpha Centauri isn't a Canadian game. It's unless you count Sid Meier as Canadian. Kitfox published Dwarf Fortress, but Tanya Short, the captain of Kitfox Games, knows the Adams brothers very well. She co-edited a book with Tarn Adams, actually 2 books with Tarn Adams on procedural generation. So yeah, I think basically Kitfox put up the money to make the Steam version of it. and I think once they've recovered their investment, which almost certainly they have, I think they get 20%, and then Bay 12 gets the remaining 80%. Oh, there's a fold apart. It's an Ontario game, so I did not realize I should have known a fold apart was Canadian because of the Canadian talent for the music. Like I said, this will be the last page that I look at. There's the Darwin project. That was for marketing, though. I wonder if there was any development money that went into it. There's a couple of these I want to follow up on my own. Okay, but I figure that's enough of that. So far as I can tell, Brace Yourself Games has not been funded by the Canadian Media Fund, but like, if you're interested in games and the stuff that goes on in the background, or sometimes even if you're just interested in terms of development, there's lots of information that's just sort of hiding in plain sight. And this is one of the reasons why I find this stuff sort of valuable to go through. For those of you who didn't know, by the way, Chronosite became Lucifer Within Us. But obviously what's described in that document, that pitch, is quite different from the game that we ultimately played. And that can give you a little bit of an idea in terms of both the stage in which certain projects are coming to the Canadian Media Fund, as well as the Canadian Media Fund, but also in terms of how things change over the course of development. And of course, I suspect the CMF understands that, so you're not going to see the all capital letters messages in Steam forums, about, oh, they didn't implement X, Y, or Z. But of course, some people will go for early access. And if they're going for early access, that can sometimes create a certain set of expectations. And the difficulty becomes, do you upset a small group of people in order to ultimately make a better game? Or do you not go down potentially fruitful avenues because you sort of feel that you're locked into a set of decisions because people have grown attached to them? Obviously, in the case of Sunless Sea, they changed the combat from turn-based to real-time. And there are people who are still mad about that. Whereas I think most people will probably say the combat is not the good feature of Sunless Sea, but I think most people will prefer the current implementation of combat over the other one. So in the end, the game was improved for it, but not necessarily for everyone. So anyways, I like data stuff like that. It's kind of fun to see the origin stories of a few games we like. I'm hoping we can. I'm actually gonna lock in the workshop work. If I have to take if I have to fight with a wounded unit, I will. But we'll see if we can try and draw things out a little bit to get some repairs in. We're at 88%. The patrols... Oh, there we go. Into the fray. The base comes alive with the sound of boots crashing against the floor. In the hangar, an engineer shouts his instructions to the crew, and a pilot rushes to get changed. You keep your eyes trained on the battle console, settling yourself with a deep breath. So, there's a side of me that wants to, go in and change all of the parts. Let's just deal with the army as it is. It's 5 units. It says even strength. We'll show them we're not to be trifled with. I may take a quick tea break after this fight. What a persistent bunch. Command won't commit any more drop squads to the site, so let's get this over with. Okay, so as always, let's take a look at the state of play. So we've got an assault rifle tank, 2 assault rifle tanks, and a tank with a cannon. That's not the easiest group that I've gone up against. So cannon and a handgun. I don't think the cannon does a whole lot of damage. And a marksman rifle, that I do need to be worried about. So this is definitely a group that wants to fight us at long range. We are also pretty significantly outnumbered, but so long as they focus their attention on the right stuff, I'm not worried. So I'm just going to move the Herald first. Okay, so that's a lot of attention that's being placed on the Protector. Normally I'd like to move the Protector forward because it's the one that's supposed to be on the front line, sort of causing a lot of trouble. But in this case, it makes a little more sense to sort of move them out of danger and work to sort of pull the enemy's attention away. Is that actually going to work? No. So in this case, honestly, I just want to do some damage. I don't even really care what I throw. Okay, I'm going to need to figure out what to do about those missiles, but that's a problem for another time. This is the assault rifle, so I think I'm okay for distance. Yeah. I don't think I can get a third in, no. Should be a little worried because I'm sort of standing out in the open. It'd be better to run behind the hill, but I'm going to just stand so that I can get as many concussive shots as I can on that enemy unit. I'm going to have to make a guess in terms of the missiles. Maybe try something like that, and then a dash to inconvenience them. Okay. So, interesting opening turn, but let's see how this all turns out. A little more damage than I was expecting, but that's fine. We knew we were going to be repairing anyway. As you can see, though, even stray shots wind up having some tough consequences. Pretty respectable damage on the part of the marksman rifle. So that was just a left arm. It was the primary weapon still active. Almost KO'd though. Yeah, second batch of attacks should work. Okay, they're down. And then we, I think, destroyed the... Yeah. Alright. So missiles aren't a problem there. Let's see what's coming after. Oop. Can watch that at full speed. So it's nice that there's an enemy mech that's been taken off. Rouge Light Girl, how you doing? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. So the big worry here again is what's going to happen to the assault rifle, and sort of as expected, they are under threat. However, it only comes at the end of the turn. So first thing I want to do is try and take advantage of any opportunity that I have to do a little bit more concussive damage on the enemy. So we'll try and run that out as long as we can. And the real question is, can I get behind cover? No, that unit will be able to fire on me. So we'll stand and take the shot we can. Yeah, that'll have to do. And then I'll do my part with the cannon shot. But there's other things that we can do. And I think, again, my primary target here is going to be the other mech, because these tanks should be pretty straightforward to take out so long as the like the marksman rifle should just sort of be able to one-shot most of the stuff. I don't want to be scared forever, so let's I'm going to dash to cover some distance. It's going to leave me exposed for a little bit, but it gives us a really good shot to take out the marksman. This is probably overkill, but I'd prefer overkill for a kind of enemy number one. Okay, they're going to eject, assuming that they survive it. Now, unfortunately, I've worked myself into a little bit of a corner here. So this is going to be one where I throw up the shield. Alright, that's a clear shot on me, so I want to make sure that I'm moving behind cover. Well, they're still shooting at me. Okay. Well, I'll just be a sponge for the enemy shots then. And the real aim here is going to be to start taking out some tanks. So we'll probably crash this turn at a minimum, but let's see if we can seal the deal. I'm not going to move the unit, though. Okay, so only one tank left. Ooh, leave that shield alone. That's going to be really sad if I have to spend some scrap to get that shield back. I mean, that's what shields are for. I probably should be a little more mindful of its health, but we should be good. One of the things that'll help is the fact that I've got other team members to inconvenience the enemy units here. Lost the shield. So that's fine. We can recover it. It's a mere scrap thing, but that's 25 salvage points that I need to spend. That obviously, if I distribute it a little bit better. So yeah, there we go. It is nice that it tells you what mech, what mech it came from. How you doing, Win4? You got your favorite iced coffee drink, and it's almost sort of sunny here. That's great to hear, Rouge Light Girl. The days have started to get a little bit longer here, so I'm a little less depressed on my walk home when I have to go into the office. Okay, so we're 5 over on our budget. If I'm completely honest, I don't usually wind up using the Astra rifle. It's a good rifle, but in practice I just tend not to use it, so I'm going to scrap it in this case. And I think that allows us to scrap something else, so I think 38's the best I can hope for. Yeah. So quite a bit more in terms of repairs that we need to do now, but... yeah. Okay, so I think what I'm gonna do once we've got our 4th frame, we'll contest the province. But what I'm gonna do while we're waiting, actually, there's a couple things that I can do. So number 1, we're gonna do the repairs. We also have 9 hours left on the mech frame. So one of the things I would like to get done, I'd like to get some upgrades done, and in particular, overdrive and stealth. Those are going to cost 600 supplies, though. So we'll get those supplies as we start scrapping items, but we'll only be able to scrap the items once we know what we're not using. So in this case, we're just kind of going for a little bit of a joyride. I'm not opposed to liberating the villages, but doing that while the province is contested is a little bit better because that just gets me some points towards the objective. Okay, mech frame's done, so we are going to build a shiny new mech, and then we will bring the region some freedom. Ooh, Manticore is a good name. Okay, so let's think a little bit about what the lineup has. So we've got a long-range shooter, we've got a machine gun, like we've got our machine gun and shield unit, and I've got my assault rifle harasser. So normally what happens, I guess, in this kind of a case, I usually have a melee unit, but I don't think I actually have any melee weapons. So maybe I do either another sniper or another harasser. Alternatively, because there seems to be a consensus growing, and I mean, I like my light maneuverable mechs anyway. There seems to be a consensus growing that heavies are not as useful. So there's a side of me that kind of just wants to have this Ocean of Steel group to sort of show that there are interesting things that you can do. Let's build something around. Let's build something around a. Oh, we've got a beam weapon. I mean, that's kind of a reason on its own to use it. So, yeah, I've got the slug, which is not as exciting. Let's go for an experimental beam deal. I don't know if the fire starter is all that exciting for us, to be honest. My god, that's a massive shield. I know whom I'm putting that on. Okay, so we can give this a tower. I may not keep it this way, but let's see where we can take this. Oh, sorry, before I do any of this stuff, let's equip the team with what we've got. So better power, but heavier. Still a boost in terms of movement, though. So what else am I giving up? 387, so about the same in terms of protection. Lower heat capacity, which I don't like. Lower thrust, too. That's really weird that this heavy actually gives me 17.5, but I don't hate it. We just have a big... So we lose a lot in terms of the thrust. That's the only thing I don't like. And to be honest, this one does use a lot of thrust. But that's because it's got the side... Nah, you know what? I think I'm just going to leave it. If I can get something up to 17.5... with the same dash, I'd be willing to consider it, but I think I'm stuck with what I got here. Build a catapult, but without the chicken walker legs. Ah, yes. Well, I have that slug, but it honestly didn't do that much damage. I haven't used missiles in a really long time, actually, so it'd be fun to put something a little longer range in it, but I'm not compelled by my current option, and it's been a while since I've used a beam weapon, so I'm going to stick with the beam. Mine-laying mech would be great. No, yeah, that's not in the game. That'd be kind of interesting in terms of controlling the enemy movement. Okay, I'm almost certainly giving them these legs. It's all too heavy. This might be interesting, though. So 243, so this is actually an overall improvement. The only thing is the heat dissipation goes down. But I'm okay with that. Looks a little bulkier. It's because they put light plate on it. That makes sense. Okay, not exactly what I was expecting, but I can live with that. So between the midway and the baseline, I think I'm going to stick with the midway for a little while. I really don't know how I feel between the two. I do like the sniper. That's pretty fast. So what else do I lose on this thing? Big drop in heat dissipation. So I could lose something on the dash, but I think the ability to move is a little bit more interesting there. This one's probably more interesting overall. Okay, tell you what I'm going to do. Let's actually take a look at the protector before I go too much further. So for starters, I do really like this huge firewall shield. So put that one on first. Obviously that slows it down, but we'll work on that. Okay, so most of the stuff's gonna make me slower. This one, I wind up giving up some heat dissipation, but better overall. Yeah, I can live with that. How do the rest of these compare? Everything makes me too slow. How are the legs? Give them light legs, and they are still strong enough to carry me. Or for 27 more. I mean, 15 speed's not bad. I'm going to start with these just because, like, this is my protector, right? The last thing I want to do is have my protector get its legs shot out from under it. So I don't feel great about it, though. I do kind of feel like I should put the skinny legs on it. Okay, I don't think we can do any better for arms. Not without the extra weight. But, I don't know, keeping this thing at medium is pretty respectable given that it's still a heavy mech. Okay, and then of course the last task, seeing if we can improve the left arms of any of my 183.39, so yeah, that's a slight improvement. Okay, so we're at a point now where we can properly build the Manticore. So maybe what we can start with. So I'm trying to see whether it makes sense to start with my highest number here, which would be the Nox, or to start with the rare. Let's start with the rare. These are heavies. This is just going to be this is going to be a little silly in terms of how this gets set up. I'm really just throwing random parts on right now, but it's going to be what we wind up building off of. So for starters, so we're already at a medium speed. Amazingly, we're also at a long dash, which I wasn't expecting at the start. So we can get some extra speed, but that comes at the expense of heat dissipation. I definitely like this one. It's heavier, but all I'm really giving up is thrust, so we'll start with that right away. Elbrus, it's only a fraction of the speed that I'm giving up. Lower barrier regeneration, which isn't really a factor here. Better thrust, so yeah, even though it's technically a downgrade. Also, the integrity's going down here, but I'm trying to get some baseline stats that I can work with for a unit with a beam. All right, looking at the legs. So total barrier here would be 343, I think. It's silly how fast I can make this thing. Let's go for this arm. So we've got 200 and what is it? 222. Okay, so this isn't really getting us anything. Left arm. What did I say it was? Did I say 158? Technically better with heat dissipation, or with a give up, or we give up on heat dissipation. I'm not 100% sure about some of these decisions. Now, weirdly enough, this might actually be my fastest mech. So the longbow's 14, protector's 14. No, the herald is 20. Okay, so the manticore. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't expecting this to be my most mobile mech, but it works. So let's not mess with it. Now, I gotta decide what I want to give up. The way that I try and make sense of the inventory here, instead of going to the all parts menu, I wind up going to the primary weapon menu. So comparing the baseline to the shard. Oh, this gives us concussive, so I'm gonna keep that aside. I kind of want to keep like one of everything in terms of weapon types. We're going to hang on to the midway for a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do scrap and detach. In this case, it's not going to matter, but this is a good sort of default for me to work with because in the end, this is going to be giving me those components that I want. Now, I'm a little reluctant to do this, but I want to be kind of ruthless in terms of how I'm approaching this. So I've put everyone through... Okay, actually, sorry. I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to do just one last pass to see whether or not there's any improvements for my people here. So this... Yeah, okay. So it is a good idea for me to... I'm going to start with the legs. So it's not even about the scrap, although that's going to be really helpful. Part of this is me, number one, trying to be a little more thoughtful in terms of how I'm building out my team. But also we're at a point where I want to start claiming some more upgrades. So being able to get the scrap and being able to get the parts for customization are a bit more of a priority for me now. Who did that? Phantom Klepto, thank you very much for a resubscription. I know it says 1 month straight. I get really annoyed. I've got a channel where I've actually been subscribed since the very start, but for whatever reason, there was an interruption, and so it knocks me down by a month. But thank you very much for resubscribing. And more importantly, I just like having you around. But you like to rise from the dead once every 5 months to do that. Always appreciated. I got to pay the rent somehow, right? I think I'm going to add the heatsink again just for the sake of the argument. Oh boy. So as you can see, I can make this thing speedier by giving up on some heat. Like, this Nox torso isn't all that bad. I think I'm gonna go for this one. I hate how indecisive I am on some of this stuff, but it's I'm basically scrapping everything that I don't use here, so I do want to be a little more careful in terms of how I'm approaching this. Again, there will still be some customization as far as, ooh, I can bring it up to 21. At what cost? Bit of heat dissipation, lower heat capacity, which I'm not crazy about. Oh, right, it was the short that stopped me from working with that. Speed and integrity. Lower dash. Heat's a problem. Okay, I'm ready to start scrapping some stuff. Yeah, I don't like... I'm more worried about short dashes, and it depends on the specific... mech in that case, so I'm not too fussed about that. A lot of the stuff can actually be determined by the thrusters that I put on them, but again, I'll only get those thrusters when I scrap and detach, so... okay, now I think we're settled in terms of arms, but we're just going to do the same routine one more time. Yeah, I'm not really seeing any major improvements here. Alright. I'm willing to give up those arms too. I think there's a select all somewhere, I just don't remember, and gives me my finger workout. Excuse me. Alright, you're amazed that they still have not made subbing via Prime more accessible on mobile. Gotta request the dot. Oh my god, that's horrible, Phantom Klepto. So, I definitely appreciate the effort. As I was talking about this a bit earlier in the stream, but like I kind of recognize that one of the things that keeps me from being like a bigger broadcaster is there's, especially when it's a very crowded marketplace like this, it helps to be accessible, right? If you make people work to see your stuff, fewer people will watch it. It's a little bit like, if you're regularly a jerk to people on stream, well, you're probably not entertaining enough to afford to be a jerk to people, right? Like, there's just more interesting options. God, Xbox is getting really naggy. It's demanding that I renew my Ultimate, and I've already signed it up to renew. Should double check that. Sorry, I just saw... I did this silly thing and looked at my email. But yeah, so like, it's one of these things where I sort of realized that I should be a little bit better in terms of just trying to, set things up in such a way that it makes it easy to do. Obviously, I can't control how Prime works. But I definitely don't like to take that stuff for granted. It's something I really appreciate. So thank you for doing that, Phantom. Okay. So there is some sense in the precision sensor on the assault rifle, right? Because it's got a fixed scatter of 6. So being able to have some more precision in terms of the attacks that the highly mobile unit is making is not necessarily a bad idea. The question, of course, is there something better that I can put on this upper body? So in terms of offensive modules, we've got heat sinks, range sensors. These ones will slow me down. This one won't. I feel, though, that overall I'm okay with where we're at in terms of the offensive module. But in terms of the reactor that I'm using, the charger, let's see. So increased heat capacity indirectly improves damage output by allowing longer attacks. And normally I should just be able to see a comparison. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but so we've got 110, 15, 115, 74. Like if I compare the Charger to the Standard, like this Standard feels like it's better across the board. Oh no, it's got the higher heat capacity. That's where that's changing. We don't really have big heat problems, so let's maybe start with the Standard core. So we've now moved up to Fast. The Focused lowers Scatter and... Okay, lower heat dissipation, though, and lower heat capacity. Restoration, I think, is about improved rate of barrier generation. Definitely don't want to worry about that. I think we just replaced the Charger. And then there's the Hot Rod, which... Big heat dissipation, same heat capacity, but lower power. Okay, so I'm happy with the Standard core on this one. Generator in the legs, so that's currently giving me extra power. Alternatively, I can give it the upgraded, and why not? Actually, that doesn't really move the needle there, so maybe we'll keep the Mark 1 on it. We'll see if we can use that option somewhere else. There are worse things. I've definitely learned from like the Dwarf Fortress stuff and some of the other things that have happened. Like there are worse things that can happen to you than being obscure on the internet. Looking at the Steam stuff now, obviously in the case like it was a VOD in terms of Brace Yourself, and obviously that game was very popular in terms of the attached. So even like the Cultist Simulator stuff, like I kind of get that it's not necessarily my green eyes and my charisma that's keeping those numbers in there. I feel a little more secure in the Cultist Simulator stuff just because I get to see how the chat reacts, and I know I'm certainly not driving people away, but I sort of get to see the movement of the numbers and how they work in relation to the broadcast. So I certainly know I can like carry a broadcast for to a larger number than I actually do, but like I said, there are other things that you can worry about in life than just the whether or not people are paying attention to you. Oh, hot tub setup. Okay, I was wondering what hot top meant, but yeah, I mean, if you really want a hot tub stream, I'm pretty sure I can get like a sufficiently large bucket and sit myself in some warm water for 3 hours if that's really what you want to see. I was tempted to go for the range sensor. So right now we've got a hybrid sensor which will reduce range and scatter. I do kind of like the idea of reducing the scatter, to be honest. The last question, though, would be the reactor. In fact, before I change the reactor on the longbow, let's change the protector. So it's also got a hybrid sensor. So low heat dissipation and 83.2. So anything else that I do will make this slower. That kind of takes it out of the running already. Okay, so we've got 80 power and 100 heat capacity. Yeah, so these restorations wind up basically being the same. It's the Manticore using. Standard reactor, I don't think I'm going to change off of that. 180. Again, I got the option of the Charger, but that comes at the cost of power. Now, in the case of the speed... Okay, so like I could see the added heat capacity being helpful, but I'm not actually... None of these units are really overheating right now, right? If you take a look at the different mechs, it's really hard for me to say that I need to worry about that heat capacity or heat dissipation. So in this case, I think I'm good for my cores. So I guess the last couple of steps would just be to see Okay, we're going to leave those legs. Light plate. Okay, definitely not putting heavy plate on. That's going to make it slower. Protector. Okay, it's currently got a heat sink. That slows it down a bit. Eh. Why slow it down at all, right? Longbow. Currently using a booster for the extra thrust. Now, I don't really feel like I need that, so could I get more in terms of the generator here? Okay, moves 19 now. Finally, the Manticore. So again, it's got its... Okay, it's only boosters available at this point. And I would prefer composite plate over heavy plate. Alright, finally we will properly name this. And what looks like a beam. That works. How's the combat? Non-existent. I just do the mech customization all day. Very good. The difference here is that we've just gotten the 4th mech, and I was sitting on a lot of basically a lot of material to work with. So I essentially wanted to get the final form of the team. I've used up my last bay, so anything that I want to deploy with a different loadout, I'm gonna have to strip down a mech and add new weapons on it. But I'm pretty happy with where I'm at here. The last thing I'm going to do is just take a look at the subsystems and see if there's anything I want to give up. So, oh god, sorry, there's one last thing I need to do. The thrusters. No, hang on. All these thrusters are locked into their torsos, so I may be able to defer that. Yeah, it wasn't intentional, but all of these things are actually fused to their... at Netch? I'm not quite sure what you mean by Netch. Yeah, not intentional. In terms of setting up these reactors. I mean, this could even be something that they sort of are doing to tutorialize the game a little bit, and just the early torsos that you get don't give you customization for the thrusters. But all that I'm really worried about here is just what else can I scrap. So let's say... it's a shame that I can't put the crystal matrix on the beam weapon. I think I'm quite ready to throw any of this out. It's very unlikely that I'm going to use heavy plate, but I only get 7 supplies for that, so... Have they been providing this game with a lot of support? It feels like you're able to get a ton of playtime out of it. Yes. I mean, it's weird to think about the idea about whether or not the game has been getting support, because I've been playing it in early access for the past couple of years, right? So... the idea of support for a game that's currently in development is maybe a little bit different from what a game that's been released has. Now, again, I don't really feel that Brace Yourself Games has, you know, half-assed it in terms of any of their previous releases, right? Like, there was sort of a surprise DLC for Crypt of the Necrodancer, but it's also fair to say that people have different expectations in terms of gaming today, right? Like, people called BattleTech abandoned after it got 3 full DLC, you know, on top of the, you know, the already very strong single-player campaign that they had in it. Now, obviously, there's a ton of stuff in BattleTech, right? There's different eras, there's, you know, there's the clans, there's the jihad, there's so much stuff that you can do in that setting. But, like, Harebrained Schemes is moving on to their next project, which was just recently announced. So, you know, it's the fact of the matter is I don't want to oversell it, right? Like, my experience of Phantom Brigade has been to experience it as an early access game that has been getting very regular updates. And certainly, there's been a lot that's been added to the game. There are some things I know they wanted to add that didn't necessarily wind up in the game. And I suppose the question is going to be that based off of the success that this game has gotten, are they going to go and sort of spend some extra time working on it, knowing that Brace Yourself is working on a lot of other projects as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some continued work on this. Would you want to make a buying decision off of the fact that there may be future work? Probably not, right? Like, it's always best to go with what the developer has officially announced. Anything else, and you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. Now, I do apologize. I know I spent a lot of time on constructing my mechs. I did say I was going to get some tea, so I'm going to take a second here before we're going to contest the province, hopefully liberate it. I know I've only got a little bit of time left. But I do actually need just both a stretch and I really need something to drink. So for those of you who've been here since the start, thank you. I'll try not to make it too long, no more than 5 minutes. But now would be a good time to get up, get a stretch, get a glass of water. Otherwise, take care of yourself. And I'm going to run ads so I can pay the rent. Not really. I just like money, though. So I'll see you all in a little bit. All right, thank you all for your patience with me. And again, I appreciate, especially for those of you who've been there since the start with the ad breaks and all of that, I'm hoping that you don't get interrupted during the broadcast with ads, because I'm certainly not the one running them. However, if I am going to be gone for a little bit, it is nice to be able to disable the pre-roll ads, which tend to be obnoxious, especially if you have to reload the stream. So, let's contest the province. By the way, my apologies, Mecha Paladin. If I'm assuming you're talking more than 2 seconds to your wife. My view on most gaming things, we are going to do the battle, but I just wanted to get this out of the way. So, especially as a broadcaster, I'm really conscious of the fact that the thought coming into head to coming out of mouth barrier is incredibly thin. Like, sometimes you're just going to want to fill the dead air. And there is certainly an entire genre of very stupid things being said by broadcasters in, the heat of the moment. And not even something that's like particularly intemperate. It's something very dumb and, likely very unfair to the game. And one of the guiding lights, and this is generally good to have. I mean, obviously, you all know that I can have a tendency to focus on the negative, usually more so for myself rather than for games. But it would just seem to me like where I can, it's nice to think about good things about games and things I like about games rather than speak about shortcomings. Sometimes I will, because it will be related to maybe confusion I'm feeling inside of the game or that. But I just sort of feel I really dislike the idea of streaming a game and then spending the time talking about what's not good about it. That doesn't strike me as very interesting to watch, and it doesn't strike me as something that, necessarily helps anything for the game either. So with that caveat in mind, I am also aware of the limitations of some of the games that I play. So for instance, I have no idea why, but there's a lot of people who seem to be really annoyed by the writing in this game, and I actually don't mind the writing in this game. I like some of the events, like the Fire Festival is one that I can think in particular that has a nice event to it. I don't think this has like a grand sort of macro story that, just leaves me on the floor, but I'm not entirely sure games necessarily have to have that. I care quite a bit about the individual people that surround those events. And, maybe some pilot progression or something like that would have enhanced it. That's maybe a road that the game could have gone down. But one example where I do think there's a little bit of a seam that you see from what was pursued in early access versus what the existing game is actually the way that the contest province system works. Because in the old version of the game, it used to be that you needed to do a number of different missions to build up the resistance and then contest the province. Whereas now it's entirely possible to just cross the border, contest the province, and you're good to go. And so the idea of sort of building up hope, and that's sort of this theme that's established earlier on in terms of the cutscene. This woman who's kind of talking to her unborn child about the type of world that she wants the child to grow up in. It's diminished a little bit just because in the end, the mechanic of making, building up the hope to be able to liberate the province, like that isn't really there. It's not quite in the same way that it was in an earlier version of the game. However, I would also say, feeling like I got to do some homework before I can liberate a province, right? Before I can hit that contest button. That can feel like a bit of a drag too. So in this case here, I actually rather like the fact that I get to decide when I contest the province. Overall, I think the game is better for it, even if it means that there's a little bit of a disconnect between what the cutscene is saying versus how it actually winds up playing out inside of the game. There's a few other different ways that you can see that, but I think ultimately the idea of sort of building up towards a liberation is one of these things where, to me at least, it feels like the game went down one direction and they decided to move in another direction, and there's a little bit of a holdover, which, if you could imagine, like, the brace yourself tea. Like Adelaide just sort of sits down and through sheer force of will, like works out every last detail of Phantom Brigade before. By the way, I'm sorry to reduce it down to one person, but like I don't want to like go through the whole credits to make this example. But like if you had this theoretical situation where like every last detail was worked out and written out, and then people just implement it, you could imagine that maybe this whole contest system would work a little bit differently. Hello, Vanguard Master. If you check out the VOD, there was a bit of an outline of us discussing the Canadian Media Fund, which you might find a little helpful. But like, don't go out of your way to look for it. It was kind of trivia, but you may find it helpful when taking a look at some of the pitches and that. And yeah, 1-4. I'm being silly a little bit about the advertising stuff, but I do appreciate you sitting through it. I'm annoyed by it. I'm definitely annoyed by ads during the broadcast as opposed to during a break. But anyways, I did promise we would liberate, so let's make this happen. Gear up. At your order, the base flies into action and prepares for a fight. An engineer sprints towards the bay to check on the guns, passing a scout relaying combat data through the radio. There is shouting everywhere. At your side, someone's leg bounces up and down, boot heel tapping on the grate. You feel eyes on you, awaiting your command. Suit up. And Asia Gaming, Random Gaming, your moment has arrived. It's not just combat. We've got a big fight ahead of us. It's listed as very hard. Interestingly enough, like level-wise, we're slightly higher than the threat level here is 210 compared to our 109. Oh, hang on. We got to add our... So, Tango and the Manticore. That should even things up. So now it's just hard. We're 142 threat versus their 210. There's going to be reinforcements. I suspect some of this may be a turret, but this is definitely going to be one of our harder fights. Now I'm going to take another 45 minutes to get my units built. I think we'll just jump into the combat and see what can happen. Now, given that there's some distance we need to cover, I'm not sure the Manticore is going to be that helpful at the start. Ooh, I hope they keep this song. I know this intro music is sometimes different. What a persistent bunch. Command won't commit any more drop squads to the site, so let's get this over with. Okay. I'm hoping... I don't think Riley's still around here. I'm hoping it's okay for me to say that. I feel like there's enough time that's passed by to say this. I got a chance to hear this a few days before they added it to the game, because the composer was kind enough to just sort of send in an early one. I think it was because he knew I really liked... there's actually a name for the track now. I can consult the soundtrack. So one of my favorites is Surge, and this particular one is called Pushing Through. But I think because he knew I liked Surge, he said, you might like this one, and I listened, and and he saw that it was good. Okay, now this is an amazing opportunity for this beam unit. So even though there's like some nastiness that's on its way, I'm never gonna have an opportunity this good again. The only question is whether or not it's actually gonna hit the tanks, but I'll worry about that later. Okay, we should actually, before we do any of this, let's take a look at what we're up against. So we've got dedicated missile slinger, something with a machine gun. That's some serious damage it does. 564. Marksman, 2 marksmen. Good lord. Okay, yeah, this is not gonna be easy. A missile tank. That's something you don't see every day. That's the first missile tank I've ever seen. Okay, autocannon. Oh, that's gonna sting. Okay, I need to make sure that's not pointing at my ally when it does that. Okay, 2 autocannon and an assault rifle. Okay, so This, if it's not clear, this is a different kind of tank. So one of the things you can do against tanks, like let's say one that's not firing a missile, if you put yourself in behind certain types of cover, there's nothing that it can really do about it, right? It's sort of low to the ground. Most of its shots are just going to go into the side of walls. These tanks actually raise themselves up to go over cover. These are actually rather nasty little enemies to deal with. So here's what we're going to do. I want to pay attention to the unit these tanks are attacking. Looks like it's the Herald. Now I'm curious, if I just run the Herald off to the side like this, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make kind of a friendly fire incident on their side. They'll work for a little while. It's probably long enough to make it worth sticking with. All right. It's not exactly the bravest round for the Herald, but the big thing here is that it's taken away the threat to this unit. Now, there's missiles that are going to be flying towards it. I don't know if this unit's going to be able to get away in time. I think what I'm going to do is move back a bit. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be in trouble, but... good to hear. Sending the French women to liberate the region with love and champagne. Okay. So, quite a bit of attention on the Protector. I think the best thing I could do here would actually just be to walk behind cover. The question is, what's the best cover? So if I go off to the side like this. Not worth it. Okay, so we're going to dash... Gotta find out which of these is the scarier of the two weapons. They're about the same in scariness. So I'd love it if I could fire some weapons against these guys. I think I'm probably just gonna wind up walking into harm's way. I'm not thrilled about the fact that I'm exposing my shield to some more attacks. Obviously, that was a problem we ran into previously, but I do need this unit to kind of move in and get active in terms of doing some damage. So it's the opportunity that I've got, basically. Now I can get a little bit of revenge though, and use my own marksman to hit that unit. All right, we are ready to watch the magic happen. We're going to watch this from the enemy side, and we're going to do it all in slow-mo. So there you can see that thing moving up. You can speed it up a little bit at the start, but once the weapons start getting fired, then... Okay, shield paid off. Actually, that may still be a dodge. Nope, that was the shield. Alright, here's the moment we've been looking for. Does it hit these guys? It works! Alright, this is going to be a thing of beauty. The longer they stay in the beam, the more damage they take, and that's going to run for the full turn. Alright, what's the damage look? Oh, wow. Okay, so this thing, in principle, is great, and in practice, it just doesn't deliver enough on the damage. So that was a full duration of the beam, but it just doesn't do enough damage to make it worthwhile. Okay, but here's the important thing. We have other tools available to us. Okay, so this counts as a medium mech. That's a medium mech. So we're just gonna run in and we're gonna smash into anybody who looks at us funny. Be the mech that I target. Yeah. When in doubt, whop them with your shield. Okay, let's just layer on the concussive damage as much as I can. Alright. So this unit's shielding against me, which is good. Okay, I'm not crazy about the fact that this unit's able to attack me, especially because the shield's not going to be helping. So if I move back... Now, I think the problem here is that I'm not going to get a clear line of sight on the enemy here. Well, it seems to say that I will. It's definitely one that I'm willing to roll the dice on. I think I'm just going to charge ahead. Okay, that doesn't work because I'm going to trip over the tank, but I'm pretty sure I can just run in between the enemy units like this. This is a pretty hair-raising situation to put this particular unit in, but I think most of the people who are attacking them will crash as a result of the Manticore. And if they don't, the Herald is not going to be around for very long. Okay, how much damage does this assault rifle do? 338. I think I'm just gonna stand and take it. I would prefer my attention to be on this unit. But I don't have a lot of... Actually, here's one thing I can do. Use my marksman rifle. Mind you, that unit's gonna be attacking me, so I need to make sure that I... Ugh. Alright. Looks like I'm trying to get my revenge after all. Yeah, I'm feeling quite overwhelmed, but in this case here, we're basically going to try and delete the right-hand side of the engagement with a well-placed shield, and we're just going to take it on the chin for most of this and hopefully take a few pieces off the board. So... Now, if we can get a chain reaction of crashes, I'm going to be really happy with that. Oh, hang on. I don't have my shield up for crashing into this guy. This is going to be a disaster. looks like they shot through the building, so there's going to be a bit of pain for the... Oh, no, he's dodging. Sadly, we didn't deliver on the attack here, so there's going to be a pretty nasty attack that this guy's got to deal with. So primary weapons down on this unit. Okay, we are watching this. We're watching the assault, the Herald, for the duration of the next one. Okay, this guy's concussed, so we've got 2 mechs down this turn. Whew! That was. I feel that is one that merited a full slow motion run. So we'll watch that in full speed just to see how everything went. But what we're most interested in is the absolute mad lad on this end. So this thing starts attacking him. And again, I kind of foolishly paid attention to the building, forgetting the fact that these things are designed to shoot over cover. So, with missiles flying to the left and right, manages to dodge the tank, threads the needle, all the while delivering hits, which actually successfully concussed this enemy. And we'll see the consequences for the rest of the missiles. But yeah, that was something special. By the way, one lesser appreciated feature is there is the way the weapons look. Like, you do see the battle damage. It's not fully simulated. I think like just it takes a look at how, like, what the health level is. But you'll notice that shield's not looking as shiny as it was at the start of the battle. But yeah, like I love stuff like this, right? Just seeing this building get torn apart and then the reply coming in. But we're ready to go. All right, what the hell do we do this turn? Okay. Yeah, unsurprisingly, the entire army is ready to just murder the Herald, which amazingly has not taken that much damage. So maybe one of the things I want to do is just dash them out of there. No, I don't have the heat for it. Okay. So we're going to run like hell. All the while hitting the enemy in the back. Because if we could deliver another KO, I'm laughing. So what do I do to give my... So the thing here, right, is that they're kind of targeted by everything on the battlefield right now. So this is an autocannon. I don't... Oh, what the hell is the range on this autocannon? Yee. All right. Gotta take that seriously. So the question here is, I'm going to finish crashing at the end. So I guess one of the questions is, can I just roll over this enemy? Not until the attack is done. Okay, so if I dash... I mean, that's just a collision waiting to happen, but... Oh, this is gonna look good. So, like, I don't exactly want to do it this way because I take too much damage, but just look what would happen on this, right? So I dash through, put the shield up, stand in front of the tank to cover the attack, and then we finish him off. The problem is that this shield isn't that strong, so I need to just adjust the path a little bit to ensure that I collide. And that crashes that tank, so that gets rid of that. Well, actually, so far we're intact. So my protector, my heavier unit's definitely taken some damage. The one that's in the middle of the fight is amazingly still ready to go. We crashed, but we didn't lose the unit. So in this case, we're dashing. So this is entirely designed to just get rid of one of the sources of damage against the enemy unit. Now this one is firing its machine gun at my unit over here. So the good news is they're firing into the side of the hill. If I move my assault unit to the herald to the right, then they're going to get hit by the machine gun. But right now this is useless. So the missiles are going to hurt, and I'm probably going to have to wonder what on earth I'm going to do about the attack here. Oh, I know what I'm going to do about the attack here. We're going to move my unit with a marksman rifle off to the side. I've never had to fight a battle like this. This is actually really fun. And actually, you know what? If this doesn't work, I've only got one shot on making this count. So the idea here is that the rest of the team now has to support the assault, the Herald making its escape. There's 2 sets of missiles that are on their way to damage it. So I'm also wondering, maybe we cancel this attack. And then I dash. Not too hot. Okay, that's a level of heat that I'm willing to work with. And then I'm assuming I can't, yeah, I can't fire after that. But this is just a chance to try and give some of these missiles the slip. I wouldn't agree with that. So if you take a look at this autocannon, not this one, this autocannon. So this thing does 360 kinetic damage, and if I take a look at the Herald, it's 364 in its center torso. So it's not a full killer. The other thing that's weird on this one, I'd never appreciated that there could be an autocannon with this kind of a damage cone. So there's 2 sets of autocannons which do 360 damage, which would be enough to kill a center torso, and they're all actually near optimal range. So in this case, I do actually want to take this one down because I'm going to have to deal with the missiles no matter what. That's going to be what the dash is intended to deal with. So yeah, in this case here, we're going to try and help my ally first, and then we'll get into position to try and take out another mech. In this case, all right, so get behind the cover and open fire here. Okay. So this is useless. I don't need to worry about doing any more damage to this unit. I need to get myself into position for a follow-up. I don't have the heat, sadly, but I'm gonna do what I can on. Well, if I do what I can here, then that means the sidearm gets shot. Okay, handgun. How much does it do? 41. That's damage I'm willing to take to deal with the tank. Okay, finally, after we crash into this enemy unit, let's make the beam happen. Just want to make sure. Okay, I have every reason to believe that this crash is going to work out. Oh, sorry, I totally missed some of the other things that were said. This really does remind you of XCOM Make a Play, try to set a few things up, react to the enemy. Yeah, no, very much so. Vanguard says, I had a super early morning today to do a pitch. Need to catch up on your beauty sleep, so I'm going to head off for night. Watch out for the enemy bullet. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Vanguard Master. And again, It's actually been a shockingly busy week for me, so I'm sorry I've not seen your pitch deck yet. I wanted to get on that as soon as I could, but I'm gonna have a lot of work to do after this stream, let alone your stuff. So I'm sorry. I do intend to follow up with you, but is that the publisher we talked about? Because that's actually really good to hear if you thought it went well. So that's really wonderful to hear. If it's the one that I'm thinking of, I'm happy to hear. Mecha Pallet, actually, so Vanguard Master is a fellow Canadian, and he's currently he's actually currently developing a game and is pitching to some publishers. So I mean, by the way, Vanguard, if you want, feel free to send out any links that you want. I know you don't need permission, but I believe his background would be through a Bannerlord mod. Another publisher. Okay, cool. Nope, I mean, look, sorry, I am going to get back to the game, but when I was applying, so I talked to, I haven't moved into games, and I'm debating as to whether or not games is the right place for me, except as like maybe a consultant or something like that. But I did get to talk to someone at a dream company for people to work at, and one of his recommendations, particularly on the idea of like doing code tests and things like that, was that it's not bad to have like a couple of interviews at places you don't want the job, so you can like just get your interviews out of the way and like kind of find your flow, and then like do the application to the one that you're really interested in. So that's actually one of the reasons why I wound up applying to Ubisoft. And I would have taken it under certain circumstances, but the money wasn't quite where I wanted it. So I'm actually I'm happy to hear that you've got this opportunity to sort of get a little momentum behind you, feel confident in terms of your pitch, and I'm hoping you have some choices by the end of it. But if nothing else, I'm just glad that you're going to be coming into one of those other interviews from a position of strength. Oh, very cool. Is that through their ARC program? You have no transferable skills to the... You'd be surprised. Actually, there's a book that was recommended to me from a developer called Range, by Daniel Epstein, which I really liked, and I may have it wrong, but there's basically a program that Paradox is doing for like smaller games. Yeah, it's Paradox Arc. So it's sort of intended to be sort of their up-and-comers one. So Stardew was the first one announced for that, and I'm noticing that they've added Across the Obelisk, Surviving the Abyss. Oh, interesting. I thought that was going to be like something in the Surviving Mars group. Mechabellum and Knights of Pen and Paper 3 are currently the ones listed under that. But I'm not going to lie, like just because this is an earlier game for you, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not appropriate under the Paradox. I mean, in terms of the stuff they're interested in, right? I know that they've been wanting to do RPGs, and actually some of their failed projects have basically been the ones that are RPGs that never came together. So I know that's something that they've wanted and they've never quite gotten right. So I know that's working in your favor there. But also too, like, it's a really good looking title. So, it's like visually, like it's one of these things where I'm like, damn, I wish I could do stuff like that. So it may just be that that's one of the things that they want to push in the main label. But anyways, I'm really happy to hear that you've gotten some positive signals. Obviously we won't break out the champagne until you've got a deal. But I'm very happy to hear that you're starting from such a good spot. It's very likely that this building is going to be destroyed, but at least it's some cover while I deal with the rest of this. So I don't even know which one I want to see at the start. Let's start at the wide view. Let's start with a hero who's running through the front lines, and then we'll move from there. this down. So two, well, one enemy mech down, one effectively done because its primary weapon's out of commission. I've never really played Knights of Pen and Paper, Calamari, but if it's a recommendation, I think I might even have it in my library from a Humble Bundle. Okay, now I want to see how this turns out. Oh, crap. That might... God, this guy's made of Teflon. Oh, this is gonna hurt. That dash is gonna come too late. Get out of the way, tree. Okay, well, the crash is happening. It's just not happening in the way that I wanted it to. Alright, so there's a hell of a lot of other stuff that happened on this turn that I want to see. Okay, so I want to see what happened with the marksman. So yeah, totally failed to deliver on... Oh no, looks like we crashed it at least. Bridge inspectors, civil engineering technologists don't have much to offer, especially old ones. Like, the thing is, so one of the people who I really respect, and somebody who I feel has been a very good source of sort of knowledge from me, I believe, started off as an English teacher, worked into, I think they wound up doing databases for a little while in financial services, and I think as a result of the 2008-2009 financial crisis, sort of wound up in a situation where there were a number of people sort of being asked to sort of take a leave of absence, with the implication kind of being that if you didn't, you were probably going to get sacked anyway. And from that, they founded, a company. And I think there might have been a bit of friendly fire here. But, you know, that's not a skill set that you'd necessarily think is in line with becoming a game developer. Like, not just becoming a game developer, but like a quite a successful one, I think. You know, it's the thing is, though, like, I learned this working in film. Like, it's possible to enjoy watching movies without making them. And I think that's true for gaming as well. Like, I think the skill set and the number of things you need to do is just different. So I'm definitely a very interested kind of outsider in terms of how it all works. But whether or not I've got it, you know, whether or not I've got what it takes to make a meaningful contribution in terms of the games industry, I couldn't tell you. Okay, so there's a few things in play here. I still have missiles coming after me. Now, I kind of wish I knew who was being targeted by that. I'm gonna guess it's the Herald. But the question is, do I really want to, like, hold off on doing anything, you know, for fear that I'm gonna get hit by the missiles? So maybe what I can do here is we'll do the attack. I'll move back. Okay, I like this because it's keeping me behind cover. Yeah. The only thing that's not good about this is that I'm not doing a dash to avoid the missiles, but I think that's just going to be a part of life at this point. Okay, this unit's ejecting, so we're good there. Manticore is going to be up, and I think honestly at this point we just let her rip with the B. I mean, it's not going to do anything, but it's better than just kind of standing idle. Okay, I'm going to cook for a little bit. This unit's pointing its shield at me, then it's firing its missiles, but it's going to presumably crash into the side of the hill, so I don't need to worry too much about that. I think the answer here... So I'm not going to attack this turn just so I can decide who... Oh, no, I'm doing their job for them by moving. Okay. So wait it out. That's a little hot, but... may not help me in the end, to be completely honest, but we can hope. Now, unit with the marksman. So I think in this case I need to hide behind the cover for a start. So yeah, we'll just peek around the corner, and then, like, again, I don't expect this thing to last for a whole lot of time, but anything to sort of take the edge off the enemy attack. All right, I guess that's everyone spoken for. So for what it's worth, sorry, I want to respond a little bit more to what's being said in chat about the project as well. If you've listened to any of the Paradox podcasts, Shams Georgiani, who's no longer with them, I think he's actually doing a lot of consulting for Hooded Horse. He has talked quite a bit about sort of so there's the question in terms of fit with the publisher. Everything that was mentioned in that is in fact one of those things that they talk about in terms of like the business of video games podcasts. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me to hear those details, but it's actually really helpful to sort of know how you're doing in terms of that rubric, because if you have an option to sort of tranquilize some of the concerns that they may have in terms of being signed, obviously that's going to help you out. And incidentally, Vanguard, if you haven't heard those podcasts and you think they might be useful to you, just send me a DM on Discord. I'll try and find the most relevant links to you as quickly as I can. But anyways, you got to get some sleep. That's great news to hear. I'm really happy that you've got some progress on that. And Mecha Paladin says, at my age, I'm just going to enjoy the games and do the job. I do love my job. Bridges are freaking awesome. I mean, I rely on them, so I'm actually hoping that we keep all of the talent in the inspectors, because I'm not quite sure what that means for me if there's a brain drain in your field. Yeah, I'm really glad that this has been worth it for you, Mecha Paladin, because like obviously you do the best you can as a broadcaster, but it's as Steam is as good of an indicator as anything. I'm definitely not for everyone, but I'm delighted when people find something they can consider sort of an internet home. So, all right, let's see how this turn works. Oh god, this guy's in for a really tough time. Maybe the run will help. I do need to care about their ability to take concussive damage. Scary numbers. But I don't think it's enough to take us out. We are going to get hit in the back with it if we get hit, though. Okay. No more concussive damage for this guy. Alright, we'll have to look at the story of the marksman rifle after. Oh, that's great. We just took another mech out. Alright. As you can hear, it's become much more optimistic soundtrack-wise. This did the trick, right? I love moments like this, right, where you just run in the nick of time behind cover and then you take them out on the follow-up. So this is where the beam really paid off. If you can focus it on an enemy attack, then it's good. Now my mistake for for the Herald here was not dealing with those missiles. I wasn't 100% sure who they were targeting, but obviously that's a lot of damage that they took for no good reason. And that potentially would have been enough to take the pilot out with the... Did I just shoot a rocket out of the air? Oh god, if I did, that's amazing. So let's slow that down and see exactly what happened there. Oh crap, sorry, I went over the timeline. I'll try and use the controller for angles. Oh, either they've disabled the controller or it's not plugged in. Yeah, man, it sure looks like it. Maybe if we take a look from the top. I mean, again, everything's simulated, right? So there's no reason to think that if there's a collision between a bullet and a missile. Yeah, man, that thing definitely blew up before reaching me. Okay, that is very cool that you can just you can shoot stuff out of the air. I had no idea. That's you've got that was a good call. I wouldn't even have thought to look for something like that. God, I love this game. All right. So, this unit's trying to defend itself. This unit's going to eject, so we don't need to worry about it. This unit is currently crashing, but it is going to fire some missiles at me when it's done crashing. And this unit is basically stuck in place, so I kind of get to deal with it whenever I want. So the question really is, like, what's the biggest threat to me right now? Arguably the missiles, but the missiles are getting fired at the very start, so maybe instead of moving, we just stand and fire. So there's a bit of heat off of that, but so stand, fire, run where I can. Actually, there's one other thing that I can do. So I'm going to move this unit around the side like this. And the reason for this is that that shield is going to be pointing at my unit as I go through. So the drawback here is that I may get hit with a rocket. So I'm going to set up my shield there just for a little bit of protection. Now the reason why I'm doing it this way is that now I can move my unit with a very high concussive damage, and we're going to be able to attack the unit in the back as they direct their shield toward my ally. I'm actually going to push it a little bit later in the timeline to make sure that their back is facing me as clearly as possible. I sort of have a free unit here. I think it's probably better that I deal with this tank sooner rather than later, so we'll start there, and then we'll move in on enemy units. Okay. Nope. This unit hasn't been given an order. I guess for good measure we can give him a little beam too. Okay, I think I have a clear idea in terms of where all the major shots are gonna go, so. It's probably gonna get its missiles off before I can take it out. As long as I don't lose a part. Okay, I've dealt with the worst of it. I don't think I can get a good shot on what's going on in the background there, so we'll just focus on the marksman. Longbow. Yeah, it's gone. So many trees. All right, that's the match. So, worth remembering, there were reinforcements that were supposed to show up, but this is what a battlefield looks like after a good round of Phantom Brigade. That was a hell of a lot of fun. All right, 210 scrap. We also didn't lose any parts, which makes me feel good. So let's start by grabbing all the colored bits, and then we'll see what's left. So I am tempted for this tower shield. Oh, God, no. Sorry. I thought this was a different kind of shield. That's not nearly enough. I think I'm just gonna take this for the scrap value. Okay, so we've got another 15. Yeah, I mean, there's a side of me when when I have a certain amount of momentum. I kind of wish for the opportunity to take on the reinforcements, but okay. So I think 38's the best I can hope for out of the damage stuff. Nope, 55 because it's a torso. Yeah, I can live with that. Okay, so plenty of repairs to do. Now the good news is we do have the overdrive and stealth, so this patrol isn't necessarily going to be a worry for us. Looks like we've got an objective to deal with here, and there's also going to be a battle site. I am going to prioritize the objective for the simple reason that it's closer. But I do want to make sure that I help the home guard before they get into trouble. My usual routine has been to load out the units before battle, but I'm going to take a quick look at options for the upgrades here. So I don't think I'm going to worry about accelerated repair. Also, I don't have the option available. I don't think I have the option available on pretty much anything. Yeah, so unless I scrap something... oh, that's not true. Unlock reactor. Yes. And then what's it going to cost me? Jesus! They really raised the rates on this stuff. It's good, because, I mean, again, it gives me a reason to be going through all of these different provinces and doing stuff, but... Yeah, I have no idea where that comes from, Mecha Paladin, because, like, first of all, the thing was in development for 7 years. But, like... Yeah, like... This game, to me, like, I have no idea how an independent team made a game like this, right? Like, the technical animation on its own is just phenomenal, right? But, like, you know, again, just being able... Like, I've been playing this thing for 2 years, and the fact that I can still go into a battle and have you, like, point out something like, did you realize you just shot a missile out of the air? And to have little moments like that is just... Like, there's nothing else like that. I genuinely cannot think of another game where I've had something like that. I have a slight suspicion that this is people indirectly complaining about the fact that there isn't a, like, a full battle replay. Like, operating under this assumption that it's easy to do and that, you know, they just rush the game out the door you know, without implementing that. I get an impression. I mean, again, like I said, there are things that feel like seams, right? So the hope mechanic, I don't even know if it's still in the game. Like, you can just contest a province right away. There used to be a little bit more to that, but I think ultimately they got rid of some of the busy work. So I think that is the right call, but it does, like, not entirely mesh because it was originally built for something different. I do, however, like the process of, like, running through all, like, I do like the process of running to the battle sites and having allies and things like that, though. So it's a trade-off, and I like the decision that they went for. Could this game have a whole progression system? Of course it could. And, like, I think there was some rival system that they were planning on as well. I know that was actually something that was talked about very early on in the game's development. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that you can have an idea for something, but we play implementations, not ideas. And I think most good game ideas that I think of, right, the sort of things that I play and I'm like, wow, this sounds like a really neat idea for a game. Almost every single one of those lends themselves towards new things you can do with them. And that's why there's things like modding, and that's why there are things like, you know, sequels, right? So Civilization is a wonderful game. It is also clear that over 25 years, there has been more stuff. There's been stuff that Civ can do better. And this is why it has been very enjoyable to play previous Civilization entries as well as more modern ones. But Yeah, to call this an unfinished game, unbelievable. Like, I have no idea where people got this idea. But as always, you know, if you can, focusing on the positive is always best. Because just I'm utterly floored by this game. I love everything about it. So, but that battle did take me a bit later than I was planning on going. So I think I have to wish you all a very good evening. I am, however, going to see if we can find someone to host tonight. So, yeah, thanks, 1-4. We'll see who is online. Ah, nice. We've got a few... got a few people streaming. So I noticed one says Canadian and also says from Bomber Crew Manager. So if it was Bomber Crew, I actually really like that game as well. So I'm going to be hosting Revived Snow. As always, I feel a little... oh, apparently that's not the right one. There we go. So as always, I just feel the need to remind people that most of the time I like being able to host, you know, people playing the same game as me. I don't know a ton of people on Twitch. I know enough, but you know, there's been a couple of times where I've hosted something and it hasn't necessarily worked out. I hope, as always, for the best, especially because they're playing a game that I like quite a bit, and of course, the Canadian tag's always a nice little bonus to work with. So, in any case, thank you everybody for watching. Quick word in terms of what we're doing for the rest of the week. On Friday, it's either going to be Cyberpunk 2077 or Against the Storm. My preference is for Against the Storm, but the week is definitely building towards a really tough one, and so I usually do Cyberpunk if I want to just unwind with something I don't need to think too much about. For next week, Monday we'll be back to Terra Invicta, and next Wednesday we'll be playing Phantom Brigade. So if you're just here for the mechs, I look forward to seeing you within the week. And of course, for those of you who just really like my Phantom Brigade stuff, but can't abide anything less than 1.0, I believe the video I did for Brace Yourself is still playing on the Steam page. It should be going away reasonably soon, but anyways, thank you everybody for watching. Please treat Revive Snow well. See you later.